Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. Job Transfer for All, From Bronze Lord to Immortal Demon God. Chapter 81, Countdown to Monster Siege. 10, 9, 8, 2, 1, 0. Open. With the arrival of the last moment, countless monsters walked out of their territories and headed towards the nearest city. At the forefront are the low-level monsters in each territory. These monsters are cannon fodder launched by the leader creature. What wild boar monsters, wild wolf monsters, skeleton monsters. It is impossible for such low-level monsters to attack the walls of any city. Their only purpose is to drain the player's mana and supplies, and tire the player out. The high-level monsters in each monster territory followed behind, meandering forward all the way. Finally, there are all kinds of evil bosses. Surrounded by his undead creatures, Zhang Qian stepped into this world for the first time. It's such a fresh air, finally set foot in the world again. No industrial pollution, no messy chemicals, no ubiquitous car exhaust. After more than 100 years of development, many existences that do not conform to the characteristics of the times have been completely eliminated. Countless undead creatures headed towards the imperial capital with a deadly atmosphere. Zhang Qian didn't plan to attack Tangcheng directly. He made up his mind to go to the imperial capital first to harvest a wave. There are more high-level players in the imperial capital, and they are all the most robust leaks. If such leaks are not cut, how can they be worthy of their high level? Under the blessing of various lords' halos, the group of monsters ran very fast, and in just over half an hour, the tall city walls of the imperial capital were within sight. Zhang Qian's expression was a little shocked. The city wall of the imperial capital was really too majestic, far surpassing any ancient city he had seen in his previous life. Not to mention in reality, even the ancient cities in those online games are not so majestic. On the walls of the imperial capital, there are arrow towers, divine light towers, and elemental towers. It's hard to say how powerful these defensive facilities are, but it looks oppressive. In addition to defensive towers, there are bed crossbows, cannons, and catapults. Many are made by gamers, and some are made by ordinary people. In the era of national job change, ordinary people who have not changed jobs can be regarded as NPCs. They can issue tasks to players, and they can also create things that are recognized by the rules with their hands. As long as it is approved by the rules, the manufactured items can obtain data attributes, which can take effect on monsters and players. It is also for this reason that the production of the entire world has not been greatly affected. Apart from defensive towers and defensive equipment, the strongest defense method of the imperial capital should be the defensive barrier covering the entire city. The defensive barrier has the feature of air forbidden. When flying monsters reach the area covered by the barrier, they will be automatically lowered below the city wall, so they cannot directly attack the internal facilities of the city by crossing the city wall. Time passed by every minute and every second, and the monsters from all directions finally completed the assembly, and the entire imperial capital was surrounded by water. On the city wall, those players who have participated in more than one monster siege have become accustomed to this scene. And the newcomers who just changed jobs to become players this year were shocked. There are so many monsters. There are so many monsters, when can we finish killing them? If there are thousands of soldiers, there is no border. If there are thousands of soldiers, there is no border. If there are more than 1 million soldiers, there is no border and no shore. What the hell, is there more than 1 million? You can't even see the end at a glance. Monster siege is like this. Seeing your ignorance is really embarrassing to me. I'm so cute. You don't pretend to be aggressive, you only changed jobs this year, so pretend to be wool. Look, there are many lords in the monster group. During the monster siege, the monster explosion rate of these lords has also increased. Sure, but it's a bit difficult to pick up the drops. It's okay. Wait until the monster siege is over before picking it up, it won't refresh anyway. This year's monster siege may be more difficult than before. Why? Is there anything to say here? Because this year there is an extra monarch boss who understands the art of war. Hiss. You mean, Lord of Unhappiness? Who else but him? He's just a monarch boss, so it shouldn't affect the difficulty of monsters attacking the city, right? It's hard to say, I always have a bad feeling. Shut up. Don't be crowed. Without any stalemate, after the assembly was completed, the lords of all parties issued an attack order to the monsters in the front. countless low-level monsters rushed to the city wall and launched a fierce attack on the city wall. The monsters don't have the consciousness to climb the wall. The order given to them by the lords is to attack the city wall and consume the durability of the city wall bit by bit. And before the low-level monsters arrived under the city wall, various defensive facilities on the city wall had already launched an attack on them. A shell from the psychic cannon was fired, and when it fell into the monster group, it exploded instantly. A wave of divine light from the divine light tower can also burn a large number of monsters to death. The attack of the arrow tower is also very strong. Each arrow can kill a mob. The most terrifying thing is the elemental tower. This kind of defensive tower fires slowly and needs a certain amount of time to accumulate energy, but every shot is a large-scale magic. Chain lightning, hellfire, blizzard, nail. With all kinds of high magic combined, there is no dead angle under the wall. The mobs of the 20th and 30th levels couldn't hold back even a second under the attack of this kind of large-scale magic. The players were not idle either. Mages and archers had already started their offensive. Low-level players had a range of about 100 meters, and the higher the level, the farther the range would be. Players with more than 100 levels, whether it is bow and arrow or magic, can shoot thousands of meters. The lethality of advanced players is not weaker than various defensive towers, even worse. In this multi-party cooperation mode, it is really difficult for low-level monsters to get close to the city wall. But all players know that this is just the beginning. The monster siege lasted for 3 days, and now only 1 hour has passed. And this hour was still spent during the gathering of monsters. The further back, with the appearance of high-level monsters, the defensive pressure will definitely increase gradually. Zhang Qian sat on the back of the Earth Dragon, watching the slaughter under the city wall from a distance behind the battlefield, and his heart was calm. Many of those monsters who died were his subordinates, but he didn't give up at all. For him, it doesn't matter how many people die under his command. There is no need to care about how many low-level undead creatures there are in the entire underworld. Zhang Qian withdrew his gaze and looked left and right. He felt several powerful auras, that is the aura of other high-level bosses. With the improvement of his strength, his vision distance has also been greatly improved, but because there are countless monsters in the middle, he can't see the figures of those bosses. But according to the information provided by the rules, it is not difficult to identify the identities of those bosses. There are many secret realms, large and small, near the imperial capital, some of which are even more famous than the Dark Labyrinth, and some secret realms have even produced more than one artifact. Chaotic Dragon Nest, Qingling Underground Palace, Thousand Beast Canyon, Underground Dark Lake. There are monarch-level bosses and emperor-level bosses in these 4 secret realms. The Chaos Dragon King in the Chaos Dragon Lair is even a legendary emperor boss with a level as high as 300. His strength can even kill the current Zhang Qian in an instant. From the beginning of the era of job change for all people to the present, no one has been able to break through the secret realm of the Chaotic Dragon's Nest. In previous years, every time monsters attacked the city, and every time the Chaos Dragon King appeared, the master players guarding the imperial capital could only deploy formations to summon the gods to descend into the world, in order to force the Chaos Dragon King back. The Doomsday Demon Queen in the Qingling Underground Palace, the White Tiger Emperor in the Beast Canyon, and the Xuanwu Emperor in the Underground Dark Lake are slightly inferior, but they also need the main players of the conferred gods and the assistance of countless players to deal with them. Although there are many powerful bosses nearby, the top BSs mentioned above have not yet appeared. Zhang Qian had his own plan, so he didn't act rashly for the time being. After about an hour, the mobs below level 30 finally died. The mid-level monsters from level 40 to level 60 went up. These mid-level monsters were much stronger in terms of blood volume and defense, and the defense facilities on the city wall could not kill them instantly. As a result, one after another, monsters pushed under the city wall and began to attack the city wall. The durability of the city wall began to drop rapidly, but the rate of decrease was still within the safe range. The durability of each city wall is calculated in sections. 1 meter is a section, and the durability of a section is in the millions. Moreover, the durability of the city wall is low to a certain extent, and the formations arranged in the city wall will also be triggered. Once those formations are activated, not only will the strength of the city wall be greatly increased, but also the city wall will be restored quickly. Only when the energy in the city is completely exhausted can it be possible to break the city wall. Therefore, it is very necessary to let the cannon fodder consume the energy in the city first. In this way, after more than 2 hours, the mid-level monsters were also wiped out. The bosses of all parties immediately ordered the high-level monsters and top-level monsters to attack together, without giving the players a chance to breathe. All monsters from level 60 to 100 are high-level monsters, and monsters above level 100 are considered top-level monsters. The role of high-level monsters is to cover top-level monsters approaching the city wall. At this point, the players finally became nervous. On the city wall, in various United Front channels, the commander continued to issue various orders, and the players also started to move. Hurry up, the buff will be added to the auxiliary profession, and the logistics will start to distribute materials. The mage is preparing the forbidden spell, listen to my order and release it. All fighters prepare fuel bombs, energy spars and crossbows, and must ensure a continuous supply of trebuchets, spiritual cannons and bed crossbows. Long-range troops, focus on shooting top-level monsters, don't waste output on high-level monsters. The boss is dispatched on a large scale. Players above level 100 pay attention, don't let BDS get close to the city wall. Flying monsters are coming, the remote reserve team is ready. Attention all units, don't stop attacking. Mage Echelon, pay attention to tipping. Pay attention to tipping. Although the commander's orders were orderly, the players rarely experienced such a big battle after all, so they were still a little confused. However, some omissions in details have not caused much impact for the time being. As time goes by, as players become more and more familiar with the combat rhythm, players will gradually reduce their mistakes consciously. In this way, the battle finally gradually became white-hot. Roar! An earth-shattering roar made all the players tremble in their hearts. This kind of power is definitely a top boss. Players command positions. A gleam flashed in the eyes of Wang Hu, the president of the Magic Light Society, and he said in a deep voice, "It's the White Tiger Emperor." Ranji's face changed slightly. It seems to have come earlier this year. The prince shook his head and said, "I'm afraid it came here with personal anger. Some time ago we mobilized all our forces to kill it once, maybe it couldn't wait to take revenge. Killing the top boss requires a lot of preparation, and you must take a lot of lives. So even if it is a top guild, it is not necessary to kill the top boss every time it is refreshed. Among other things, if you want to pile up bosses with human lives, you must have enough resurrection coins, right? Under normal circumstances, each player can only receive 1 resurrection coin from the temple every week. If you want to get more resurrection coins, you must. Temple brush task. Without several months of preparation, it is impossible to collect enough resurrection coins to kill top bosses. In addition to resurrection coins, the guild warehouse must be full of treasures. What is the picture of players joining the guild below? Isn't it just a picture of guild resources? Get the guild contribution, exchange it for the treasure in the guild warehouse, then brush the contribution, and then exchange the treasure. By following such a virtuous circle, the player's strength can be continuously improved. Kill a top boss once, and the guild will issue massive contributions. There are not enough treasures in the guild warehouse, what is the use of players asking for guild contributions? Not driven by enough interests, wanting to send guild players to death again and again is simply a dream. Even if it is a top guild, it is impossible to force players to perform missions. So to kill an emperor boss, the top guild will also have to cultivate their health and rest for a long time. Not long ago, the Magic Light Society killed the White Tiger Emperor once. This boss is very intelligent, and he obviously held a grudge. Wang Hu and Ranji had just discussed a few words, when they saw a huge white tiger stepping into the air and falling into the group of monsters. In the next second, a system notification rang in the ears of all players in the entire imperial capital. Epic rank Secret Realm Emperor Baihu Dijin releases power, all players in the domain will suffer negative status. Ding! You are affected by the power of the Emperor, your attack drops by 50%, and your defense drops by 50%. Very simple and unpretentious debuff, different from Zhang Qian's fancy debuffs, this debuff only reduces 2 attributes but makes players. His complexion changed drastically. The debuff of this White Tiger Emperor is too powerful. It directly reduces the attack and defense by 50%, and my output has been greatly reduced. This guy came late last year, why did he come so early this year? It's okay, don't panic, the various buffs of our players can offset this debuff. Stay steady and continue attacking. That's right, the top boss won't make a move so quickly, we still have a chance. After a short period of panic, the players regained their optimism and ignored the debuffs on them. In fact, a single debuff does not have much effect. Because there are too many players in the Imperial capital, and there are countless hidden jobs. The stacking of various buffs has doubled the attributes of all players several times. Reducing 50% of the original offensive and defensive attributes, to be honest, also affects some players who did not enjoy the buff state. However, the optimism of the players Good Li Hao was quickly wiped out by another debuff. Gold rank Secret Realm Monarch Woan Lord releases power, all players in the domain will suffer negative status. Ding! You are affected by the power of the Monarch, the attack in the upright state is reduced by 100%, and the attack in the inverted state is increased by 100%. For a moment, all players were stunned. Reducing attack by 50% is nothing. Reducing defense by 50% is nothing. There are various buff states, which can be pulled back completely. But what the hell is reducing the attack by 150% all of a sudden, and you can't bring back any buffs? The basic attack has been reduced, how can you increase it? Many players who have been to the Dark Labyrinth smelled the familiar smell, and their faces suddenly became extremely ugly. I'm sorry, that dog from the Lord of Unhappiness is here. It's over. Familiar taste, familiar formula, I didn't expect that after leaving the Dark Maze, I would still be dominated by him. It's over, it's over, it's over. It's dead. One White Tiger Emperor is nothing, but it will be a big deal if you add another Lord of Joy. How can you fight this? The attack is almost gone, and you can still hit it with a hammer. This debuff is nothing, it's a big deal to attack on his head, but I'm afraid he will kill other mobs in a while. The Scourge of the Lord of Unhappiness, he came out of the Dark Labyrinth, is there a boss to kill him? Go behead him. If you continue to be fooled by him, the Imperial capital may be doomed. Really, the threat of this Lord of Joylessness is greater than that of the White Tiger Emperor. We must get rid of him as soon as possible. Many players were tortured and frightened in the Dark Labyrinth, and their hearts were filled with fear of the Lord of Joylessness. Seeing the Lord of Unhappiness appearing on the battlefield, he immediately remembered the terrible time when he was dominated by anti-human debuffs. They asked the top players to implement a beheading strategy against the Lord of Joylessness, but how could the top players act rashly because of a Lord of Joylessness? This is obviously a bit unrealistic. How can you feel the same if you have not suffered the suffering you imagined? How can the high-ranking people accept the demands of the low-ranking ones if they haven't experienced suffering? Those top players discussed for a while and came up with a strategy to deal with it. They ordered someone to fetch the rope, set up a shelf, and hung all the remote players upside down. In this way, the downward attack becomes the upward attack, wouldn't it be beautiful? As for how much resentment the player who was hanged upside down has in his heart, it is not within the scope of consideration of the higher-ups. Zhang Qian rode a ground dragon and came to the side of the White Tiger Emperor, looking at the distant city wall with a smile. Here, his domain can cover most of the city wall in front of him, and he can receive hundreds of thousands of power of faith every moment. The reason why he stayed with the White Tiger Emperor was because he was worried about being beheaded by the players. Zhang Qian still doesn't know much about the means of those high-level players, but he knows that many players have already ignited the divine fire to seal the gods. The function player must have the strength to threaten him, so he must not be unprepared for the beheading tactics. The scope of the domain is still not large enough to cover the entire imperial capital, otherwise the speed of gaining the power of faith will definitely be faster. Zhang Qian felt a little regretful. The scope of his domain was only about 5 square kilometers, roughly equivalent to the total area of the Dark Labyrinth. But compared to the entire imperial capital, this area is a bit small. Plus, he can't get too close to the city wall now, so the area he can cover is even smaller. Not to mention him, even the White Tiger Emperor did not dare to get too close to the city wall. Whether it can withstand the damage is one thing. The key is that it is not yet time to launch a large-scale general attack. If it is too close to the city wall, it will be more conspicuous and easy to be concentrated fire. When a large number of low-level bosses and top-level ordinary monsters rush under the city wall and pose a threat to the city wall, it will be safer to go up. Wave after wave of monsters rushed under the city wall and began to attack the city wall. The long-range monsters are separated by a long distance, and attack the long-range players on the city wall. Among the top monsters, there are many types of long-range monsters. There are various mages and archers among the humanoid monsters, and many of those non-humanoid creatures have the ability to cast spells from a distance. Not to mention boss, there are very few high-level boss that can't attack remotely. The durability of the city wall began to drop crazily, and the players also stepped up their attacks. The battle is getting fiercer. High-level monsters piled up hits under the city wall, layer by layer, and even some monsters with amazing jumping ability have already started to attack the city wall. Faced with this situation, the melee players who had been bored for a long time couldn't help but get excited. Some melee players with the ability to pull people deliberately pulled monsters onto the city wall to kill them. The commander turned a blind eye to this kind of innocuous little action. After all, killing one more monster means one less monster. As long as it doesn't cause chaos in the defense line, there is no need to bother. Most players are not soldiers, and it is difficult to enforce orders. It's a pity to say that the real soldiers of Junlong Kingdom. In those plain invasions in the early years, those pillars of the country sacrificed too much, and they have not recovered their vitality until now. Acridine. Suddenly there was a scream in the distance, and all the commanders in the city defense headquarters changed their faces. Ranji said in a deep voice, "It's the voice of the demon queen of the last days, and this old witch is here." The vice president of the Excalibur Guild, Panda Yu, said, "Are you also coming to take revenge on our Excalibur Guild?" As the top two guilds in the imperial capital, they always like to compare each other. The Magic Light Guild killed the White Tiger Emperor on the front foot, and the Excalibur Guild killed the Doomsday Demon Queen on the back foot. Everyone grinned and didn't care about this question. Whether the boss comes early or late is not important to the players. Anyway, they will come sooner or later. If they can't beat them, they will summon the gods. Isn't it like this every year? So, what is there to be afraid of? This year seems to be a bit different. The panda muttered. Ranji asked, "What's different this year?" The panda sighed. "This year, there is an extra Lord of Joylessness. Many accidents are bound to happen in the defense process. I am afraid that many people will be tortured and doubt their lives." Ranji shook his head. "Don't be afraid, there are indeed many people who have been tortured and doubted their lives." On the city wall, the players who were hanging upside down shot and killed the monsters below with a super high attack, while swearing and screaming. Even the blind could see the dissatisfaction on their faces. "This master of no joy dares to embarrass me so much, what the hell? Don't let me find him, or I'll beat him until his mother doesn't even know him. What do the bosses above think? Why don't you just kill the Lord of No Happiness? Hi, I must be waiting for other bosses. Get rid of one early now, and the pressure will be relieved later." Don't people understand this truth? They won't understand. There must be other plans. Lord of Unhappy Dog Day, I have long heard that he has brain problems, and only now have I learned how despicable this guy is. Stop scolding, attack quickly. How about scolding a few words? Isn't it okay to vent the world? Zhang Qian looked towards the direction of the city wall to the east, with a hint of surprise in his eyes. The Doomsday Demon came, and brought a large wave of undead monsters. Moreover, as soon as the old hag came, she launched an attack directly. The old witch also cast a debuff on the player, but the coverage is only part of the east wall. It uses the debuff commonly used by undead creatures, which brings effects such as weakness, magic resistance decay, and reduced hit and dodge to players. The debuff cast by the boss on the player and the buff cast on its own subordinates can be regarded as a kind of rule, a rule added to the territory. This rule has nothing to do with power, but only with power. Essentially, this act of adding rules to the territory is to borrow power from the subject of the rules to strengthen oneself or weaken the enemy. The player is also protected by the rules. The greater the weakening caused to the player, the more power will be consumed. Most of the bosses are straightforward, wishing to suppress the player's attributes to zero, that is, use as many powers as there are. But Zhang Qian is different, he pays attention to balance. From the perspective of the rules, states such as handstand, upright, somersault, and gibberish do not affect attributes, so they don't consume much power. In contrast, directly suppressing a certain attribute of the player consumes more power. In response to this situation, Zhang Qian designed a unique debuff system. Use the action state that does not consume much power to determine the attribute suppression effect that consumes a lot of power, and use this positive and negative balance mode to reduce power consumption. It sounds a bit complicated, but it may be clearer with an analogy. The debuff that the players are currently receiving increases the attack by 100% in the inverted state, and reduces the attack by 100% in the upright state. This is probably a bug stuck in the rules, and the rules inside are very complicated and I can't explain it clearly for a while. In short, Zhang Qian's whimsical idea is obviously a success. He slightly despised the debuff of the Doomsday Demon Empress, then abandoned the White Tiger Emperor and headed towards the Doomsday Demon Empress. The White Tiger Emperor had been sitting there and did not attack the city, and Zhang Qian couldn't even get close to the city wall. On the other hand, the Demon Queen of the Last Days, her main character is a tiger character, and she launched a fierce attack on the East City Wall as soon as she came up. At this time, the attention of all the players on the city wall must be on the Doomsday Demon Queen. Zhang Qian thought that after he passed, the field might cover more people. He cast Shattering Void, traveled tens of kilometers in an instant, and came to 3 kilometers outside the east wall. The Dixing Dragon wasn't brought along, but that's okay too. After being promoted to the Monarch, Zhang Qian automatically gained the ability to fly. Although the speed is not very fast, he doesn't have to run on the ground anymore. Without the ground dragon, he is more flexible. After stopping to stabilize his figure, he began to observe the specific battle situation on the east wall. Although I saw some things in the west with super long distance vision before, it was not as clear as close observation after all. At the first glance, Zhang Qian saw the extremely huge Doomsday Demon Empress leading tens of thousands of level 150 top monsters under her command, casting various spells to storm the city wall. A normalization of stature, like abilities such as ultra-long distance vision, breath perception, and flight mode, is also a general ability of high-level bosses. This universal ability is useless, it's just for bluffing. The Doomsday Demon Empress wears the unique attire of the former Empress. The overall image looks dignified and elegant, but her appearance is very ugly and does not match the clothes at all. But I have to say that this old witch's methods are really amazing. With a wave of her hand, countless meteorites fell from the sky, hitting the defensive barrier of the imperial capital continuously. Some meteorites even penetrated the barrier and landed on the players on the city wall, and some players with lower levels and less health were instantly killed. There was a burst of chaos on the city wall BCDC, and it took a while to restore order. When Zhang Qian saw this scene, his heart moved slightly. This defensive barrier seems to be very flexible, with a certain filtering function, and the high-intensity attacks it endures will be buffered to a certain extent before being let go. In this way, the barrier is even less likely to be broken. The Demon Queen of the Last Days has a lot of means. After a wave of meteorite attacks, there is another wave of hail from the sky. Each hailstone is no smaller than the previous meteorite, and the damage caused is also very exaggerated. Even if it is filtered by the defensive enchantment, it can cause tens of thousands of damage when it falls on the player's head. Without the HP provided by various buffs, many advanced players would not be able to withstand such damage. Zhang Qian watched for a moment, then flew to the head of the Doomsday Demon Empress, and landed directly on its phoenix crown. The Doomsday Demon Empress is an undead boss after all, even though she has some wisdom, she doesn't have much dignity. As long as Zhang Qian doesn't attack it, it won't generate hatred even if it shits on its head. If it does not generate hatred, it will not attack Zhang Kai. In this way, Zhang Qian used an Emperor boss as a mount, released the domain comfortably again, and applied a debuff with a very strong personal style. Thus, the players on the city wall heard a terrible system prompt. Gold rank Secret Realm Monarch Woan Lord releases power, all players in the domain will suffer negative status. Ding! You are affected by the power of the Monarch. Every time you use skills, you must praise the Lord of Joyless. The sound of praise must not be lower than 80 decibels, otherwise you will fall into a state of epilepsy for 10 seconds. After the praise is successful, the next time you use its skills have a 50% chance to double the damage, another 50% chance to deflect, hitting any unit within 500 range. Deflected skills, the power will increase by 50%. The debuff takes effect immediately. Many players have not reacted yet, and still maintain the previous inertia of thinking, continue to brainless display of skills. As a result, he accidentally forgot to praise the Lord of Unhappiness, and immediately fell into a state of epilepsy that lasted 10 seconds. In an instant, a large number of epileptic players appeared on the city wall. All of them twitched, foamed at the mouth, and some even started to roll their eyes, looking pitiful and funny. Those who didn't have time to use their skills were suddenly stunned. What's going on? Why did he start to twitch all of a sudden? It's too scary. I'm a worm. Lord of Unhappiness, that Dogby, isn't he on the west side of the city wall? Why did he suddenly come to our east side of the city wall? This debuff is still as anti-human as ever. Nima, I almost threw away my skills just now, I really have lingering fears. Be careful, don't use skills indiscriminately. Look at the debuffs on your body first. Praise the Lord of Unhappiness. Isn't this asking us to flatter him? Isn't this boss too shameless? I can't help it, who is calling someone a boss? Seriously, I've always heard that the Lord of No Joy is such a dog, but I never had an intuitive feeling. Now I finally believe it. This boss is a real dog. Many players have seen from the regional channel that someone said that the Lord of Unhappiness appeared outside the western city wall, and they were worried about the players in the west, and some even gloated, thinking that you can get away with it here. As a result, it didn't take long for the Lord of Unhappiness to run outside the east city wall, and launched a ruthless mental bombardment of the players on his side. Those players who were gloating just now suddenly became extremely complicated, and they simply didn't know how to describe their mood at the moment. 10 seconds passed, and the players who suffered from epilepsy finally returned to normal. They looked blank, not even knowing what had just happened. They didn't know that they had encountered such a terrible experience until the players around them who were not recruited told them. I've been tricked just by being quick for a second. How unlucky. Ah, it must be ugly to be insane. The image of my old lady is completely ruined. Lord of Unhappiness, I hate you. I'm going to kill the Lord of Unhappiness. Kill him. This dog is too hateful. Come on, I can't see the Lord of Huan now, how can I kill him? I don't know where he is hiding. Are you blind? Isn't he right on top of the Doomsday Demon Empress? You can't see such a big monarch boss with such a dazzling halo. Ah, I didn't notice, shit. Is this guy really on the head of the Demon Empress of Doomsday? Isn't he afraid that Demon Queen of Doomsday will get angry? The Demon Empress of Doomsday allows other bosses to dominate her head. They are all strange, they belong to the same group, how could they get angry? One thing to say, the comparison of the Lord of Unhappy is really compelling. It's too awesome to use an Emperor boss as a mount. Brother, you are good at boasting, let me learn from you by complimenting me a few more words. The first wave of epilepsy players demonstrated, and other players became more cautious. Although there is a debuff on his body, the battle that should be fought must be fought. Therefore, players who are ready to release their skills overcome their psychological barriers and start trying to praise the Lord of Joy. The Lord of Woan is mighty and domineering. Look at my big fireball. YYDs, Lord of Unhappiness. Slash the ground. The Lord of Woan is tall and handsome. Soul-chasing arrow. The Lord of No Happiness is suave and suave. Healing. The Lord of Unhappiness is my father. Lightning dart. The players all turned into sycophants, blushing and shouting at the sky, and all kinds of praises on the city wall came and went, which sounded extremely disgusting. 80 decibels is quite challenging for some players with relatively low voices and lack of breath, and some people can't let go, and they can't shout 80 decibels. Without a doubt, these people directly judged that the praise failed, and immediately fell into a state of epilepsy for up to 10 seconds after releasing the skill. And those players who judged to be successful, some of them enjoyed the benefit of doubling the skill damage, and suddenly laughed happily. The other part unfortunately encountered a skill deflection, and beat the surrounding people to the bone. As a result, the city walls once again fell into chaos. Many players were furious, and their hearts were full of anger. These anger cannot be vented to one's own personnel, but to the monsters under the city wall. So, they had to hold back their anger and praise the Lord of Unhappiness loudly. With a smile on his face, Zhang Qian listened to the system prompts coming from his ear, feeling extremely happy. Player Battle Group. Target the Lord of Joy. Negative emotions from player XXX plus 233. Transformed into 233 points of power of faith. Negative emotions from player XXX plus 555. Transformed into 555 points of power of faith. Negative emotions from player XXX plus 777. Transformed into 777 points of power of faith. Since the Doomsday Demon Empress is relatively close to the city wall, the coverage of Chengqi's domain has also expanded a lot. According to preliminary estimates, the domain probably covers more than 70,000 players. The speed of gaining the power of faith is much faster than that of the West City Wall. After Zhang Qian's super evolution, the power of faith collection progress is only 10 million before he can evolve again. After the accumulation of this period of time, the last 10 million has finally been made up. Without the slightest hesitation, Zhang Qian directly chose to evolve. He has experienced the energy transformed by the power of 100 million beliefs before. Needless to say, the feeling brought this time is basically the same as the previous time. But the improvement brought about by evolution is obviously impossible to be as terrifying as super evolution. But in terms of improved attributes, even more than before. The previous super evolution multiplied the original basis by 10, but now it is only multiplied by 2, and the multiples are very different. But 10 times of 1, and twice of 10, the amount of growth is obviously more than the latter. Lord of Unhappy Undead Monarch. Level 50 experience points, 211.4 with 500 W. Rank Dark Gold Monarch. Evolution 3W10E. Super Evolution La10E. Life 4000 W plus 3200 W. Mana 400 W plus 320 W. Attack 400 W 600 W plus 400 W. Defense 400 W plus 320 W. Skills Dark Sword / Death Pact, Dark 9 / Dark Flame, King's Power, Eye of Chaos, King's Domain, Chaos Sword, Shattering the Void, Elegy of Soul, Gate of the Underworld, Elemental Control, Driving Personal Conquest, Last Judgment. Territory Dark Labyrinth. As before, after this evolution, the previously possessed skills have been strengthened to a certain extent, and another skill has been obtained. Doomsday Judgment. Summon the legendary Doomsday Messenger to initiate annihilation. A certain chance of summoning a flood, a certain chance of summoning an asteroid, a certain chance of summoning an interstellar plague, and a certain chance of summoning a cosmic plague. For this skill, Zhang Qian is somewhat dissatisfied. Although this skill looks very bluffing, it will destroy the world at any time, but Zhang Qian has never thought of playing the world. If he is really an inhuman boss, maybe he will really use this skill. But his soul is essentially a human being, because his heart still yearns for human life. Under such circumstances, if the world is really destroyed and all human beings are wiped out, what fun is there for him alone? I will never see beautiful young ladies, watch good movies, or enjoy delicious food. What is the meaning of life? So destroying the world or something, only a lunatic would do it. However, this world seems to be very big, and it may be useful in the future. Zhang Qian looked up at the sky, his eyes seemed to travel through endless time and space, and he saw countless civilizations hidden in the endless starry sky. When civilizations collide with each other in the future, it should be destroyed or it must be destroyed. In all directions, both monsters and players felt the terrifying energy fluctuations. The first to feel the changes in Zhang Qian's body must be the old hag, the demon queen of the last days. She grinned and didn't pay much attention to it. This is a real boss, her mission of existence is to eliminate players, her insignificant wisdom naturally hopes that the monster side will be as strong as possible. Then, there are other bosses around. There are many bosses in this battlefield, not only the Doomsday Demon Queen has wisdom. Some low-level bosses with better chances also have wisdom. They looked at Zhang Qian with envy, and obviously knew what the situation just now meant. As for the boss without any wisdom, he just glanced at it and then turned around and continued to attack the city. On the city wall in the distance, the players also felt the terrifying energy fluctuations. Many people have never seen the evolution of boss, and they can't help but panic. What happened just now? What's going on? Such a strong magic wave. Could it be that some boss is brewing a big move? Nonsense. Look at the big moves of the Doomsday Demon Queen, do they have such strong fluctuations? It must not be the fluctuations caused by the skills. Don't guess. There is a boss that has advanced. If I'm not wrong, it should be the main area of Wawan. What? Impossible. Hasn't he just advanced? Before it was super evolution. Just now it should be normal evolution. Boss 2 evolution paths, only super evolution will trigger the system announcement. Hey, in such a short period of time, the Lord of Unhappy has evolved again. How did he develop? Can he make money from the air? What the hell is making money out of the air? Did your ancestors play sword towers? Is it true that no one can cure this boss? Why can he maintain such a fast evolution rate? Hey, who knows? Maybe he was given the protagonist template. It's hard to say that this guy is really the protagonist of the current expansion pack. Stop talking nonsense. How can there be any expansion packs? Have you played too many games? As the news spread, the players on the other 4 walls soon also received the news. Everyone is shocked by the evolution speed of the Lord of No Joy, especially those players who have been paying attention to the Lord of No Joy. City Defense Command. The Vice President of the Magic Light Society, Yan Ji, said with a complex expression, "I didn't expect that it would be too late for the sanction. This Master of Joylessness has become a serious problem for all players. During this monster attack, he must be killed once, and he must not be let down again." He developed smoothly. The President, the Prince, shook his head. It's not yet time. The Lord of Joylessness is now mixing with the Demon Queen of the Doomsday, so it's really hard to do anything. When the Chaos Dragon King appears, we will summon the gods to descend to Earth, and with the help of various debuffs provided by the gods, we will just kill them all, so please stay calm now. Diao Long, the president of the Excalibur Guild, disagreed. What if the Lord of No Joy sees that the situation is not going well and runs away? This boss doesn't look like that kind of brainless boss with a hard head. The vice president, Panda, quickly echoed. I think it is still necessary to kill the Lord of Huan as soon as possible, even if you pay some price, this time you must not let him escape. If you wait for him to return to the secret realm, you will have to kill him for thousands of years. It's so difficult. On this matter, Ranji rarely reached an agreement with Panda, and he also began to persuade his own president, Boss, do it. You really can't let the Lord of Wanwan go, this boss is really abnormal. He is now a dark gold boss. The monarch is now, but the level is only at level 50, which is the best time to kill. More importantly, now is the period when the explosion rate is increasing. Killing him may explode more than one artifact. Don't come again when the opportunity is never lost. The prince hesitated for a moment, nodded and said, okay. Then let's form an elite team and kill him. There is no need to question the action of high-end players. After the 2 top guild executives made a decision, they immediately began to call top players. Several other big guilds also wanted a piece of the pie, so they also sent top players to join. Thus, Rizzy, a team composed of top players from Luda Guild, was established. This luxurious team came to the East Gate through teleportation, and then released the flying mounts. After improving their condition, they flew directly out of the city. Zhang Qian and the Doomsday Demon Empress noticed this powerful team immediately. The Doomsday Demon Queen Jia laughed strangely. A terrifying skill was released from a long distance away. Grasp of the Void. The old hag tried in vain to hold everything in her hands and make everything submit to her feet. For the enemies flying in the sky, they must be pulled down. But Wang Hu and other top experts and the Doomsday Demon Queen are already old opponents, how could they not know its methods? When you know that you are going to face the Demon Queen of the last days, you must be prepared. Seeing that the old hag released her skills at herself and others, Ranji quickly took out a scroll and crushed it. In an instant, a huge water mirror appeared in front of the team. The big hand formed by the void grip skill of the Doomsday Demon Empress directly passed through the water mirror and disappeared without a trace, causing no harm to everyone in the team. The old hag was furious and was about to release her next skill. However, the prince also took out a scroll and crushed it vigorously with pain on his face. Then, a mark shining with colorful light fell on the demon empress of the end times. Zhang Qian could see clearly that the Doomsday Demon Empress immediately had a silent debuff called God's Punishment, and the skill it was about to release was stillborn. This silence debuff actually lasts for 10 minutes. Even Zhang Qian couldn't help being surprised. The higher the boss is, the stronger the negative status resistance will be. Ordinary control skills will basically be immune to high-level bosses. The control skills that can take effect on the Emperor boss are definitely from the hands of the gods. Although the function is very single, but the effect is very domineering. 10 minutes of silence may not seem long, but it is enough for top players to deal hundreds of millions of damage. And the boss can only single-click without skills, and the killing efficiency will obviously decrease infinitely. However, Zhang Qian still underestimated the player's methods. After the prince released a super debuff of silence, another top player also took out a scroll and added a super debuff to the Doomsday Demon Queen again. Long live peace. The name of this debuff is simple and unpretentious, but its effect is better than the sanction of the gods. This turned out to be a disarm debuff. The duration was also as long as 10 minutes, which directly put the Doomsday Demon Empress at a loss. She roared wildly, but was unable to attack the approaching enemies. Zhang Qian's expression was serious, and he already realized who the target of the wave of players in front of him was. What they want to kill is not the Demon Queen of the last days, but him, the Lord of Joy. The defense of the Emperor boss is desperately high, and the blood bar is so long that it can't be seen at a glance. 10 minutes of control time is simply not enough for them to kill the Doomsday Demon Empress. But these 10 minutes allowed them to kill a level 50 Monarch boss. Although Zhang Qian realized that he was being targeted as the primary target, he was not too flustered. He smiled slightly, used his authority, and refreshed the domain debuff again. The Lord of Unhappy Lord of the Dark Gold Secret Realm releases the power, and all players in the domain will suffer from the negative state. Ding! You are affected by the power of the monarch. When the hair volume is full, you will randomly obtain the following states: silent, flustered, lonely, cynical, and blessed. Every release of a skill has a 50% chance of interrupting the casting and prolongs the CD of the skill by 50. When in a state of panic, each attack has a 50% chance of interrupting the attack and making the attack interval extends for 2 seconds. When in the state of loneliness, there is a 50% chance to steal 10% of the attack points of friendly units and convert them into 100% magic power. When in the state of cynicism, there is a chance of 50% chance to convert 10% of own attack into 100% HP to heal the attack target, and when in the blessed sharing state, there is a 50% chance to share with teammates every time you suffer an attack. Bear this injury. In the case of zero hair volume, all your attributes will be increased by 100%. This debuff called Braised Egg Superman fell on the top battle group in an instant, and then continued to spread towards the distant city wall. Wang Hu and the others were taken aback for a moment, then became angry. The corner of Ranji's mouth twitched. He gritted his teeth and said, "This Lord of No Joy has started to work again." Daolong sighed. "I have long heard that there is a strange boss near the imperial capital, but I didn't expect this boss to be so weird. Really, I didn't experience it personally." Li couldn't even imagine how abnormal he was. Quote, Panda asked helplessly, "What should we do? Under the effect of these debuffs, we can't output at all." The prince said with some regret, "Originally I had a group negative debuff dispersal scroll, but I used it when I was fighting against the White Tiger Emperor. If I knew it, I would keep it used." Quote, Yenji said, "This boss seems to want us to shave our heads. What should we do? Shave or not?" Daolong twitched the corners of his mouth. "We can't shave, we are all people with heads and faces. To shave our heads in order to fight a monarch boss, what face will we have in the future? Just hit hard, I will. I can't believe how difficult a 50-level monarch boss can be." The other top players nodded in unison. They would rather suffer a few more deaths than shave their heads and fight the boss. This is true of male players, let alone female players. Time was running out, and after making a decision, everyone rushed to Zhang Qian immediately. Seeing the enemy rushing towards him, Zhang Qian released a large piece of flame of darkness without even thinking about it. One after another, the dark fireballs smashed towards the players of the top battle group with a terrifying and destructive atmosphere. The tank players in the front row did not dodge or dodge, and directly released defensive skills to try to resist. A player unfortunately triggered the silent state, and encountered a 50% chance of interrupting spellcasting. The skill that should be released was not released, and suddenly his face turned pale from fright, and he quickly hid behind his teammates. Go. -386W. -422W. -512W. A series of damage up to millions. Some players who were not enough were instantly killed. For players who were not instantly killed, the shields generated by defensive skills were instantly broken. Everyone's face changed, and the previous ease was swept away. Yanji exclaimed, "How can the damage of this Lord of Joylessness be so high?" The panda said solemnly, "The previous bosses were not so powerful, but this boss is really extraordinary." The presidents of the two top guilds frowned and said nothing. The current situation is indeed beyond their cognition. They know that even the bosses of the same level have great differences in the same level. Race, element attributes, growth years, these are all key factors that affect the strength of the boss. Taking races as an example, the bosses of some tyrannical races are inherently stronger than the bosses of other weak races. The most typical example is that the bosses of the Dragon Clan are generally stronger than the bosses of other races. Taking the element attribute again as an example, the defense and life of the boss of the earth attribute are definitely much higher than that of the boss of other attributes, and the attack of the boss of the fire attribute is much higher than that of other attributes. The boss of the wind attribute is longer than the speed, the boss of the water attribute is longer than the recovery. There are other composite attributes, each with its own characteristics. The growth period is even simpler. The longer the boss lives, the longer he will practice, and the longer he cultivates, the stronger his strength will be. So here comes the question, no matter what, there is always a reason why the boss is strong, but why is the Lord of Unhappy so strong? Princes and Daolong who have lived for more than 200 years can't figure it out no matter how they think about it. Although the era of job change for all has been around for nearly 200 years, this is not a game world after all, and there are no game companies to share various internal information. Everything the players know comes from their own exploration. The player is not a boss, so it is naturally impossible to fully understand the development mode of the boss, and it is already the limit to understand the general information. In fact, let alone a player, I am afraid that even Zhang Qian, the person involved, may not know that he is stronger than other bosses of the same level. Because when he first accepted the information from the rules, he only knew that his evolution would double his attributes, and his super evolution would give him 10 times his attributes. As for how much improvement other boss evolutions or super evolutions can get, he only speculates based on his own situation. Getting back to the topic, Zhang Qian was not injured by a wave of impact, but was killed by many people. The top players of several major guilds were puzzled, but they did not stop attacking. The silence and disarm state of the Doomsday Demon Empress is only 10 minutes, they have no time to waste. Seeing that they rushed within the attack range, everyone quickly released various skills at Zhang Qian. 9 Absolute Sword Chi. Thunder Tribulation Technique. Shoot arrows into the sun. Thunderbolt Half Moon Slash. One after another skills, shining with dazzling brilliance, charged towards Zhang Qian with terrifying power. Since the players did not compromise, although many people successfully released their skills in this wave, there were also many people who triggered the various states attached to the Braised Egg Superman debuff. Zhang Qian deliberately tested the player's attack strength, so he did not use the Shattering Void skill to avoid the attack. A series of data representing damage suddenly appeared on his head. -32,672. -44,329. -10,086. +106800. Out of hundreds of top players, very few can deal effective damage, basically no one can break Zhang Qian's defense. The reason why it can deal effective damage is also because there are skills and equipment with sacred damage that ignores defense. What's even more tragic is that someone gained the state of cynicism, and part of the attack was transformed into healing, not only could not hurt Zhang Qian, but also gave Zhang Qian a lot of 430 blood. Seeing this situation, the players were inexplicably sad and indignant. I finally got some damage and was healed by my own people, can I still play? What annoyed them even more was that the boss in front of them even ruthlessly laughed at them. That's it, Zhang Qian smiled sarcastically. The so-called top players are nothing more than that. Why? Having said that, he was very vigilant in his heart, and was already ready to slip away at any time. Among the top players in this wave, 2 players have become gods. Both attack and defense have been transformed into sacred attributes, and the priority is very high. Holy attack can ignore normal defense types, while holy armor is immune to normal penetration and ignores defense. The 2 conferred god players can deal full damage to Zhang Qian, and it is not known whether they have other whole cards in their hands. Under such circumstances, Zhang Qian naturally did not dare to be careless. Being ridiculed by a boss like this, all the top players were immediately furious, and had no choice but to contribute a wave of negative emotions to Zhang Qian. The prince said coldly, "Continue to attack, just watch your own state, if it turns to increase blood, don't attack." In fact, there is no need to say this. They are all top players. It is enough to suffer a loss once. How can the same mistake be made again? So, they played the second wave of skills. And Zhang Qian didn't show mercy either, launching a fierce counterattack as well. The ultimatum of Elegy of the Soul is still useful, so Zhang Qian used the Dark 9 slashes in this wave. With a flash of his figure, he fell into the crowd instantly, not only dodged a lot of attacks, but also beheaded a player with a single blow. Immediately afterwards, the remaining 8 swords were stronger than one sword, and the tens of meters long sword light swept across all obstacles, and anyone who touched it would die. Wang Hu, the president of the Magic Light Society, is a melee player. He has changed his job to become a god fighter, and his strength is extraordinary. Seeing that Zhang Qian's attack was so sharp, the prince immediately rushed forward with a roar, and started a close fight with him. One player is one boss, and the weapons they use are swords, just like a duel between 2 top creators. Every move and style is as invisible as an antelope's horns, and it is indistinguishable in a short period of time. Occasionally release a skill, which can cause a lot of damage to the opponent immediately. In terms of attributes, even a conferred god player can't compare with Zhang Qian. Zhang Qian can kill the opponent even if he just hits the opponent with a general attack. But behind the prince is a battle group of top players, with a variety of top occupations, and even many hidden occupations. There are not a few players with shield skills, and everyone took turns to add shields to the prince, which made him successfully resist Zhang Qian's output. Often just as Zhang Qian broke one layer of shield, another layer of shield was immediately added to the prince's body, which really annoyed Zhang Qian. Other long-range output has been attacking Zhang Qian. Among them, Diao Long, the president of the Excalibur Guild, is a magician, and his output is extremely terrifying. Every skill can knock out more than 100,000 blood of Zhang Qian. Fortunately, Zhang Qian has more than 70 million blood, and his life recovery speed is also very fast. Even if he stands still and let Daolong hit him, he still has to use hundreds of skills to kill Zhang Qian. But it was not Zhang Qian's style to be passively beaten all the time. After fighting with the prince for a while, he suddenly released his majesty. In an instant, the attributes of all players in the field were suppressed by 20%. Then, the nearby elements suddenly began to stir. The berserk fire element and wind element combined together, driven by Zhang Qian's dark mana, forming a black tornado. Elemental mastery. Starfish hollow square consumption. The tornado takes shape instantly. Nearby players will suffer elemental damage equal to Zhang Qian's normal attack every second. Hundreds of players were instantly killed, more than half. The other half were either locked at one point, or shivering while hiding in refrigerator-like defensive skills. Top players basically have means to save their lives. Even if it is a top boss, it is unrealistic to kill a group of top players with one move. The fire tornado only lasted for more than 10 seconds before disappearing. Such a large-scale, indiscriminate, and dead-angle attack consumes too much mana. Even if Zhang Qian had millions of mana points, he couldn't hold on for too long. He still has to save some mana to use other skills, and it is impossible to use up all the mana. In just 10 seconds, the surviving players felt as if they had experienced the end. Since the start of the war, the surrounding monsters have been attacking the player. When the state is intact, the top players naturally don't need to pay attention to the attacks of ordinary monsters. Even if it is a top-level monster at level 150, it will be difficult to produce effective damage against players at level 200. But now, many players use props or skills to lock their health at one point. At this time, the attacks of those top monsters cannot be ignored. As the blood lock effect of skills and props ended, some players who hadn't had time to increase their blood were unlucky enough to be hit by the top monsters around them and died on the spot. In this way, there are fewer and fewer players around. The prince was also gradually unable to support himself. Without the healing, shields and status blessings given by the team, it was impossible for him to last long under Zhang Qian's sword. Death is your destination. Zhang Qian looked down at the prince, and said flatly, "Why insist on it? You still can't kill me." The prince's face darkened, and he was a little angry when he was face to face with a boss. As soon as Zhang Qian raised his hand, he released a large piece of flames of darkness, covering all players under the flames of darkness. -442W. -322W. -421W. Another large area of millions of injuries, because many people have surrendered their life-saving skills just now, no one will be spared in this wave. In an instant, everyone was instantly killed by super high damage. Originally, Wang Hu and Daolong, the two conferred god players, could resist a wave, but unfortunately, some of the other players had the blessed sharing debuff on them, which directly shared a large amount of damage with them. As a result, even the true gods couldn't bear it, and the two conferred god players knelt on the spot. And at this time, less than 2 minutes had passed since the demon queen of the last days was silent and disarmed. This shows how quickly the battle ended. The top players and high-level bosses are both too fast, and both sides can resist each other's output to fall into a protracted battle. Once one party's output has an overwhelming advantage, the other party will be defeated in an instant. To kill high-level bosses, there is no other way except crowd tactics. In fact, the success rate of this raid organized by the Grand Council of the Imperial Capital was not high. What's more, they also misjudged Zhang Qian's strength and regarded Zhang Qian as an ordinary level 50 monarch boss. In this case, their demise is already doomed. Zhang Qian landed on the head of the Doomsday Demon Empress and continued to watch the city wall from a distance. The resurrection point in the Imperial Capital. Wang Hu and other top players were silent, and the atmosphere seemed very solemn. Ranji suddenly cursed angrily, "This wave is really a big loss. Not only did it fail to kill the Lord of Huan, but it also wasted 2 key items in vain." The prince waved his hand and said, "It's not necessary, let's go back to the headquarters first. It seems that the matter of unhappiness can only be discussed in the long run." Everyone walked quickly to the headquarters, but they couldn't help discussing along the way. The panda said with a serious expression, "This Lord of Unhappiness is more difficult to deal with than we imagined." Daolong spread his hands and said, "No way, I was not prepared enough this time, and I didn't test the Lord of Wanwan before. It's normal to be wiped out under such circumstances. Didn't we come here like this before? Which one to fight? Have you ever wiped out a high-level boss? Keep your mind balanced and don't make miracles happen just because of such a trivial matter." Wang Hu frowned, disapproving of what Daolong said, but he couldn't say anything at this time. In just over 10 days, the former fallen Dark Sword Master not only grew into a Dark Gold Monarch boss, but also had terrifying strength. If this boss is given a period of time to grow, what height will he grow to? So the failure to hunt the Lord of Joyless this time is definitely not a trivial matter. But in order not to affect morale, this matter can only be regarded as a trivial matter. Otherwise, if the leader is panicked, what do the people below think? Affected by various debuffs on the wide city wall, the defensive front of the players will be chaotic for a period of time from time to time. There were players yelling all the time, and the entire defense line was as noisy as a vegetable market. My skills have been interrupted again. A fireball technique, the CD has been extended to 2 minutes. How dare you believe this? That fool stole my attack again. Can you show some face? My attack is almost stolen. Brother, can you stop scolding? You didn't do it on purpose, why bother? If you want to blame it, blame the Lord of Unhappy, it's all his good deeds. The attack has turned into increasing HP again. I have never fought such a disgusting battle. Look, the top players are back. Hey, the situation is not good. The debuff of the Lord of Joy is still there, he is obviously not dead, and the faces of the top experts are not very good. It seems that it's back from death. Horror. Gathering so many top players to kill the Lord of Woan failed. How strong is the Lord of Woan? It can't be stronger than the Demon Queen of the last days, right? I have farsightedness skills. I saw clearly just now. The Demon Queen of the end of the world was silenced and disarmed, and the other bosses are also far away. From the beginning to the end, the Lord of Joy and a group of top players. The blame is attacking the bosses, the group attack of the Lord of No Joy is too terrifying. A few moves will kill the bosses. It's so terrifying. The top bosses are all in a wave of seconds. It seems that we people don't even have the qualifications to participate in the war. That's not enough. Fighting high-level bosses requires crowd tactics, and we can act as cannon fodder. Each person can contribute a piece of holy damage, and so many people can accumulate. Killed the boss. The most important thing now is that this Lord of Unhappiness obviously does not play cards according to common sense, and he likes to use various debuffs to torture us. High tactics to deal with him. I'm afraid we will have to fight first before we rush in front of him. Quote. No way. How could we fight ourselves? Who knows? Maybe it will or it won't. Facing the Lord of Unhappy, the crowd tactics will become Schrodinger's crowd tactics. No one knows what will happen until that moment. The monster siege continued, and many players couldn't bear the torture, and even shaved their hair off. Zhang Qian looked at the players shaving their heads on the city wall from a distance, and couldn't help but want to laugh in his heart. If players who are not afraid of death are forced to shave their heads, I should be the only one in this era, right? However, just shaving your head is not enough. Since that debuff is called Braised Egg Superman, there can't be a single hair on the head, and the eyebrows must be shaved to be considered a perfect braised egg. Many shaved players didn't realize this at first, and it took a long time to wake up, and they had to shave off their eyebrows as a last resort. Anyway, the hair has been shaved, and the eyebrows are also gone. There are points rewards for killing monsters during the monster siege, and the points for killing monsters can be exchanged for many good things at the Angel. For some players who focus on improving their strength, if they can improve some attributes, kill more monsters and get more points, let alone shave their heads and eyebrows. Nothing else matters. The Doomsday Demon Empress became even more frenzied after being attacked by a wave. It advanced several hundred meters, and even entered the range of the players and the defense facilities. In order to avenge the players, it constantly uses all kinds of terrifying big moves. The players on the city wall are killing one after another, and the resurrection coin reserves of the major guilds are being consumed rapidly. Many players couldn't resist launching a counterattack, but the attacks they played couldn't cause effective damage to the Doomsday Demon Queen at all. Commanders had to yell loudly to prevent players from continuing to attack the Doomsday Demon Queen. Now even if all the players focus their fire, this super boss cannot be killed in a short time. The current situation does not allow players to go out of the city to pursue it. Even if the boss is beaten with residual blood, the opponent can still run. What's the point of fighting? It's a waste of output. The promotion of the Doomsday Demon Empress also gave Zhang Qian more benefits. As the distance advances, Zhang Qian's domain covers a wider area and affects more players. In this way, the growth rate of the power of faith will naturally increase. In order to maximize the benefits, Zhang Qian will respawn a wave of debuffs every once in a while. The players in the field can be described as miserable. Chaos broke out on the city wall again and again, resulting in loopholes in the defense line, and many top melee monsters could occasionally charge up the city wall. Although the top melee monsters that charged up would be wiped out soon, the east wall still looked a bit precarious. But Zhang Qian and the player commanders all know that as long as the city walls and barriers are not broken, the imperial capital cannot be breached. Even if a few monsters rush in, they can't turn up any big waves. Only by completely tearing down the city wall and breaking the barrier can the city be completely destroyed. Time flies, and 2 days have passed in a blink of an eye. As Zhang Qian expected, although the eastern city wall looked more and more dangerous, after more than 40 hours, the situation was still in a stalemate. Although more and more monsters invaded the city defense was still as strong as before. In fact, there are too many players in the city. The city wall cannot accommodate all players, and there are a large number of players in the city waiting to change defenses to earn points. They were already bored, and the monsters rushing in couldn't even interpret their dreams, so how could they threaten the safety of the imperial capital? Chapter 91. Zhang Qian looked into the distance and frowned slightly. The Chaos Dragon King and Xuanwu Emperor hadn't arrived yet, so Zhang Qian was a little anxious waiting. Although he harvested a lot of power of faith outside the imperial capital, Zhang Qian did not forget his fundamental goal. He walked out of the secret realm this time, with only one most important goal, to break through Tang City and obtain the qualification to challenge the world boss. But it is very difficult to break through a first-level city, not to mention the difficulty of attacking the city itself. Just the wave after wave of players who can be resurrected is enough trouble. More importantly, there is a teleportation array between the cities, and if a city is in crisis, it can ask for help from other cities. Zhang Qian needs super bosses like the Dragon King of Chaos and Emperor Xuanwu to restrain the god players in the imperial capital. Otherwise, the god players will follow him as soon as he goes to Tang City, in crisis. A city guarded by conferred god players and a city not guarded by conferred god players are two different things. Conferred god players can communicate and summon gods in the temples in the city. If there are also conferred god players in Tang City, then Zhang Qian will never have the possibility of capturing Tang City. Faced with a real god, Zhang Qian doesn't think he can win with his current strength. It is precisely because of this concern that he has been waiting here for the arrival of the Chaos Dragon King and Emperor Xuanwu. During the last period of Monster Siege, once the Chaos Dragon King and Emperor Xuanwu appeared, the players in the city would summon the gods without hesitation. As long as they have summoned the gods here, then Zhang Qian can attack other cities without worry. But there is not much time left for him, and the Chaos Dragon King and Xuanwu Emperor have not yet appeared, so he is a little impatient. Could it be that the Chaos Dragon King isn't coming? Just when Zhang Qian thought so, a strong coercion suddenly swept over. Even with the strength of Zhang Qian's monarch rank, he felt tremendous pressure. Even the Doomsday Demon Empress of the Emperor rank can't help turning her head to look behind her. At the same time, a slightly less powerful aura came from the north. Emperor Xuanwu, Chaos Dragon King. A look of joy flashed in Zhang Qian's eyes, and his expression relaxed a lot. After waiting for a while, a silver-gray oriental dragon appeared in the field of vision, leading a group of various dragons, flying dragons, dragonmen, and dragon-born monsters. That cyan oriental dragon is the most powerful 12th boss around the imperial capital, the legendary Emperor Chaos Dragon King at level 300. Legend has it that the Chaos Dragon Nest is the origin of all dragon species in the world. Whether it is an eastern dragon or a western flying dragon, you can find it here. Creatures that have lived near the chaotic dragon's lair for a long time will gradually be affected by the dragon's aura of the chaotic dragon's lair, and gradually transform into tyrannical creatures with dragon blood. Zhang Qian checked with the Eye of Chaos, and the creatures in the Chaos Dragon lair were indeed very powerful. Not to mention the Chaos Dragon King, just any 5-colored dragon is an epic monarch boss above level 200. Any ordinary dragon is a legendary king boss above level 150. And those western flying dragons are all dark gold king bosses above level 150. As for the dragonmen and dragonborn monsters below the flying dragon, even the worst ones are the 105 level bronze lord bosses. It is no exaggeration to say that all the bosses in the Chaos Dragon Nest. Not even a top level common monster. With such a powerful force, only the gods can resist it. In contrast, the top-level undead creatures under the command of the epic Emperor-level boss Doomsday Demon Queen are basically no different from miscellaneous cannon fodder. Zhang Qian did not leave in a hurry, but turned his gaze to the imperial capital. He had to confirm that the gods had descended into the world before he could leave the imperial capital with peace of mind. On the walls of the imperial capital, the players also felt the arrival of the Chaos Dragon King. The old Dragon King is here again. The most powerful boss near the imperial capital always arrives late. This is what is called force. Of course, the most important person enters the stage at the end. Then, is it time for the real gods to appear? It depends on the situation. If the Chaos Dragon King does not act, then maybe there is no need to summon the gods. Impossible, the Chaos Dragon King is here, how could he not make a move? Be careful, the Chaos Dragon King has joined the battle. He has amplified his moves. I have such a bad temper, I don't say a word of nonsense, and I just join the battle when I come up, how neat and tidy it is. This guy does this every time he kills a lot of players before leaving. Hey, why do those people from the top guild go to the Chaos Dragon Lair to fight bosses from time to time? Many of their equipment comes from the Chaos Dragon Lair. How can the Chaos Dragon King not hate players? Chaos Dragon King is really stingy, isn't he just taking some pieces of equipment from him, as for holding grudges like this? Amidst the players' discussions, the first wave of the Chaos Dragon King's offensive came. In an instant, the entire imperial capital was shrouded in dark clouds. Thunder billowed in the sky, and streaks of thunder continued to wander among the clouds. As if they were accumulating strength, it took a full 3 minutes before the first thunderbolt fell. Then, endless pillars of thunder followed closely, continuously bombarding the imperial capital. Despite the weakening of the defensive enchantment, players who were struck by the thunder column were still not immune. In just an instant, countless players died tragically under the lightning. And facing the defensive barriers of countless thunders, the energy is also rapidly consumed. If he keeps resisting like this, it won't take long for the defensive barrier to be completely broken. City Defense Command. The Prince of the Magic Light Society said in a deep voice, "The Chaos Dragon King has appeared, and the gods can be summoned. As usual, our Magic Light will summon a god to hold back the Chaos Dragon King, and the Excalibur Guild will summon a god to destroy other bosses and drop artifacts. Share with me." Diao Long, the president of the Excalibur Guild, nodded and said, "Let's do this, let's go to the temple together." Not long after the two conferred god players left, an infinite divine light suddenly burst out from the temple in the center of the imperial capital. Two stalwart creatures with halos on their heads, one facing east and the other north, all drifted out of the city. They are all wearing dazzling golden armor. One holds a gun in his hand, the other holds a sword in his hand, exuding infinite majesty, majestic, it is impossible to look directly at them. Wherever they went, countless brilliance fell, causing the players' attributes to skyrocket. They looked indifferent, as if nothing in the world could make them care. What a powerful buff! My health has increased from 80,000 to 8 million. Is this the power of the gods? The attack and defense have also increased tenfold. I am invincible. What are you still doing? Go out of the city and kill the boss. Chong Chong. Kill the Lord of Huan Huan. I want revenge. Just a buff, let us get such a huge improvement. How powerful is the real power of the gods? Incredible. Don't speculate on the power of the gods. If there is no such powerful power, how can a dog fight against the monster of the Chaos Dragon King? Stop talking nonsense, kill monsters quickly. The time for the gods to come into the world is limited, don't waste the opportunity. Suppressed by the holy power, the surge of magic energy on your body has disappeared. Your attributes are suppressed by 20%. When Zhang Qian heard the system prompt from his ear, a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. The gun-wielding god had already fought with the Chaos Dragon King, and the two sides frequently dealt tens of millions of damages. Zhang Qian was dazzled and longing to see it. But he just took a look, then turned and flew towards Xuanfang. Pro Yuan Xian fish, as retreat webs. Instead of watching others show off their skills, it is better to find ways to improve their own strength. Wouldn't it be 1,000 times more enjoyable to fight against those peerless powerhouses in person one day than to worship on the sidelines? Due to time constraints, Zhang Qian did not hesitate to use Shattered Void to hurry. Finally arrived outside Tangcheng after a quarter of an hour. Compared with the outside of the imperial capital, the density of monsters outside Tang City is much sparser. Zhang Qian took a closer look and found that the level of monsters here is generally relatively low, and their attributes are not very good. Basically, there are no monsters above level 120. The main force of the siege is the 6 bosses. Although the Blood Dragon Emperor, who is the leader, is a legendary emperor boss, his level is only 180, which is not as outrageous as the Chaos Dragon King. Although the level is only 180, the Blood Dragon Emperor is still not something that a small number of players can deal with, so it is qualified to be called a top boss. Because the pressure from ordinary monsters is relatively small, the players in Tang City can focus on dealing with the Blood Dragon Emperor. However, the offensive and defensive battle that lasted for more than 2 days has reduced the Blood Dragon Emperor by about half. The Blood Dragon Emperor has lost half of his health, so the situation of the other bosses can be imagined. According to the normal development, when the monster siege ends, the bosses who came to attack the city will not die, and Tang City will not be destroyed. As for whether the follow-up players can chase down the bloody boss to death, it will be nothing to do with the monster attacking the city. This was the situation in Tang City when Zhang Qian arrived, and now there are still 6 hours before the end of the monster siege, and he doesn't have time to study any strategies. The first big move, the Gate of the Underworld. Since Zhang Qian came here lightly, Zhang Qian did not bring his direct troops, so he could only choose to press the Gate of the Underworld to summon the creatures of the Underworld to attack the city. With the vast amount of mana emptied, he successfully established contact with the Underworld. But this is only the first step. To establish a plain channel, you must choose a suitable location. If there are not enough undead in the location where the passage is opened, then even if the Gate of the Underworld is opened, there will not be much troops. After establishing contact with the Underworld, Zhang Qian's consciousness seemed to be one with the Underworld, as if he had obtained the vision of God, and could observe every corner of the Underworld. Of course, there are powerful underworld creatures in some places, and if the other party insists on not letting him observe them, they can also use means to cover them up. In other words, Zhang Qian can only carry out the public areas at will, and those private areas may not be visible. His gaze scanned one area after another, and it took a long time before he found an area suitable for establishing a passage to the underworld. This area seems to be extremely hidden. In a vast valley, ordinary top-level undead monsters can be seen everywhere, and there are also a large number of undead bosses of all levels who have not been born with wisdom. Even the weakest skeletons have grown to more than 100 levels. Other zombies, ghosts, undead knights, dark knights, death knights, the level is even more incredible. 150 levels abound. These ordinary monsters can be upgraded to such a level, it can only be said that they have lived in the underworld for too long, nourished by the infinite death energy and the power of darkness for a long time. Even if they do nothing, they can still be upgraded. Compared with this canyon, the wasteland of death can basically be regarded as a new burial place. The gap between the two is like a chasm between heaven and earth. Here it is, the Gate of the Underworld. Open. Following Zhang Qian's thought, a door opened in the middle of the vast valley. At the moment when the huge space channel connects the two worlds of yin and yang, life and death collide instantly, forming a strong storm. Ultimately, death in the underworld. Qi prevailed and turned into infinite yin wind and blown into the world. The undead creatures that had been silent in the valley for countless years smelled the vitality from the human world, their eyes all lit up with a bloodthirsty light, and then frantically rushed into the space channel. The dead innately hate the living. Chasing anger and killing the living is what the dead like to do most. After opening the passage to the underworld, Zhang Qian basically doesn't need to do any unnecessary things, and he doesn't need to command at all. The undead from the underworld will take the initiative to launch the craziest attacks towards the nearest city. This is the so-called natural disaster of the undead. On the walls of Tang City, players killed wave after wave of monsters, and each player gained a huge amount of experience points. While many players die time and time again, the level never drops. This kind of income made the players feel very happy, and even the tense atmosphere of the city defense battle could not have the slightest effect. Excellent. If monsters attack the city every day, the level will not be soaring. That's right. It's a pity that such an opportunity is only available once a year, otherwise level 300 is just around the corner. Level 300 is too difficult. Even if monsters attack the city every day, I'm afraid it will take decades to get up. That's right. What's more, we are not machines. It is impossible to just brush monsters and level up every day, and we must do other things. I can't get to level 300, it's good to get to level 200. Unfortunately, this is an extravagant hope. Monsters only have 3 days to attack the city. It's true that you can't be too greedy, seize the opportunity to upgrade as many levels as possible. While displaying their skills unscrupulously, the players chatted relaxedly. Suddenly, a strong death energy surged in front of the city wall, and the sky and the earth were also surging, as if something earth-shattering was about to happen. Someone with sharp eyes accidentally saw a huge eerie portal appearing in the distance, and couldn't help exclaiming, "Look! What is that? There seems to be a gate." It's not a gate, it's a space channel. It's a plane invasion, and a high-level alien plane boss has launched a plane invasion. What's going on? Why did a high-level alien plane boss suddenly launch a plane invasion? The monster siege is not over yet. How could there be a plane invasion? Is there such a precedent before? No, this has never happened before. What should we do? The monster siege and the invasion of the planes, Tang City will not be breached, right? It's hard to say, just wait and see what kind of monsters come. Plane invasions are also strong and weak. If it is an invasion of a second-level plane creature, it should not threaten a first-level city. As the creatures of the underworld got closer, the players gradually saw their levels. For a moment, all the players on this city wall gasped. Skeleton. What a high level. It's the invasion of the underworld. Skeleton warriors with more than 100 levels, what's the matter? Skeleton warriors can still be upgraded to more than 100 levels. Hiss. There are also a large group of top-level monsters, and there are so many liches at level 150. This is a super fort. Look, bone dragons, and ghost dragons. They are all legendary king bosses above level 200. There are so many, more than the monsters that came on the first day of the monster siege. Quickly call other people on the city wall to come over and support them. We are the only ones who won't be able to stop these dead beings. After just a short moment, the sea of undead was already approaching the city wall. Under the blessing of various auras, the speed of the undead creatures is extremely fast. Compared with the main city of the imperial capital, the height and durability of Tang City's walls are far inferior. In terms of the height of the city walls of the imperial capital are as high as 30 meters, while the walls of Tang City are only 15 meters high, so the height is directly cut in half. The durability of the city wall is even lower. The durability of each section of the city wall in the imperial capital is hundreds of millions, while the durability of the city wall of Tang City is only more than 30 million. The same is true for the defensive barrier. After suffering continuous attacks for more than 2 days in a row, the energy of Tangchung's barrier was not satisfied. If it continues to suffer intensive attacks, it is really hard to say whether it can persist without being breached. The players didn't dare to be negligent, and quickly released their skills. The skills fell one after another, and a large number of undead creatures were killed, but the vacancy was filled by the ones behind, and there was no end to killing them. At this moment, a system prompt once again brought a heavy psychological blow to the players. The Lord of the Dark Gold Secret Realm releases the power, and all players in the domain will suffer from the negative state. The Lord of the Dark Gold Secret Realm releases the power, and all players in the domain will suffer from the negative state. Ding! You are affected by the power of the monarch. In the next 5 minutes, you must confide a secret to a group of more than 10 people before you can use the skill. Otherwise, you will randomly get the following states: anger, sadness, fear, happiness, excited, calm. In the state of anger, the attack increases by 100% every time you use a skill. You will have a 50% chance to discard a piece of equipment. Fear state skill power increased by 100% every time a skill is used. There will be a 50% chance of a consumable item. In a happy state, HP will be increased by 100% every time a skill is used. There will be a 50% chance of picking up a piece of equipment discarded by others. State mana increased by 100% every time a skill is used. There will be a 50% chance to pick up an item discarded by others. In a calm state, all attributes will be increased by 100% each time a skill is used. There will be a 50% chance to pick up a consumable item discarded by others. Hearing the system prompt ringing in the ear, the players on the city wall immediately exploded. I'm sorry. What's the situation? What's the situation? Isn't the Lord of Joyless Dogby in the Imperial Capital? Could it be that Mau Mau from the Imperial Capital lied to us? What the hell? The Imperial Capital is so far away. The Lord of Wanwan was still in the Imperial Capital more than half an hour ago. Why did he come so soon? Easy to say. It must be teleportation magic. A super boss like the Lord of Unhappy, it is reasonable to order teleportation magic. But what exactly does he want to do? Why did he suddenly come to Tang City? I understand. Lord of Huan Huan is a fool, he wants to attack Tang City. That plain channel is connected to the underworld, it is a gate to the underworld. It must be the Lord of Huan Huan. This idiot has awakened the ability to open a plain channel, trying to use the power of the underworld to capture Tangcheng. The truth. But what about the players in Tangcheng? With so many top monsters, can we handle it? What else can I do? Ask for help. Quickly send a message to other cities for help, and find the conferred god player to summon the gods to destroy the Lord of Unhappy. In the Tangcheng headquarters, several top players are also discussing strategies. They also came to the same conclusion. To solve this wave of crises, the only way to solve this wave of crisis is to rely on the conferred god player to summon the gods. Originally there were only 6 top-level bosses, but Tangcheng could barely gain the upper hand. But now that there are so many top-level monsters, players have no time to deal with these ordinary monsters. How can they have the time to pay attention to top-level bosses? However, the top players in the headquarters thought well, but the actual situation disappointed them. Because it is now the final stage of the monster siege, many top bosses are also entering and leaving their lairs to kill the nearest city. In this case, each city is under great pressure. Where is the time to support other cities? The most important thing is that there are not many opportunities to summon the gods to kill the top boss. Killing the top boss may explode the magic weapon. With current interests, who is willing to give up the magic weapon that may explode in order to save other cities? So the top players in Tangcheng asked around, but none of the conferred god players came to support them. This made them dumbfounded for a moment, and they were a little overwhelmed for a while. A guild leader said angrily, "It doesn't matter if there are so many, let's fight first. If you can't fight, then retreat, stretch the ground." The expressions of the others suddenly changed, and someone couldn't help but say, "But, what about so many ordinary people in the city? If we withdraw, they will die." Another person said, "Let them go through the teleportation formation first." It's not that ordinary people can't go through the teleportation formation. If it's a big deal, just spend more gold coins. Everyone nodded. That's right, let them take refuge in the imperial capital first, and they should have time to evacuate if they hurry up. After reaching an agreement, a group of bigwigs acted quickly, some organized ordinary people to retreat, and some organized player teams to strengthen defense. In short, no one was idle. On the city wall, the players are no longer obsessed with why the Lord of Huan Huan came to attack Tang City. Now there is a huge problem in front of them, and they must come up with a solution as soon as possible. Brothers, what should I do with this debuff called 7 Emotions and 6 Desires created by the Master of Unhappiness? If you want to use a skill, you have to reveal a secret, and a secret can only be kept for 5 minutes. What on earth is he thinking? How can such a weird debuff be produced? What good does it do him? Hey, don't worry about this now, think about what to do. The monsters are almost hitting the city wall. It's said that the debuff of the Lord of Unhappiness has no solution. I don't believe in this evil. I don't want to talk about secrets and see if he can make me unequipped. That is, the equipment on my body is all soul-bound. The Lord of Unhappy made a wrong idea this time. He must not know that the equipment on my body cannot be thrown away. Haha. It makes sense. How do we lose the soul-bound equipment? We can't lose it ourselves, but he, a boss, can make us forcefully discard the equipment. Many players don't believe in evil, and start attacking directly as they talk. After a skill, these players suddenly had many additional states. Then, the second wave of skills was released, and various expressions appeared on the faces of these players. Some are angry, some are sad, some are fearful, some are happy. In these states, the combat power of these players suddenly increased significantly. Next, the fun begins. Among these unbelieving players, some were lucky enough to pass the probability judgment and receive a round of buffs in vain. And the other part is more unlucky. The player who was stubborn at the beginning suddenly threw his wand out of his hand with a look of anger, and even threw it directly under the city wall. There happened to be a player next to him who was in a happy state and had never played the probability judgment. He laughed and jumped off the city wall to pick up the discarded piece of equipment. Before he picked up the equipment, a group of long-range top monsters shot him in the air. This scene happened in many places at the same time, some ran to pick up discarded props, some ran to pick up discarded blood medicine. No matter where the discarded things fell, they rushed over to pick them up irrationally. Many players jumped off the city wall and were killed by countless monsters on the spot. Seeing this scene, the players who were lucky enough not to be recruited were dumbfounded. I'm going to die. Longevity. Soul-bound equipment can be discarded. Isn't it outrageous? What the hell, I was fooled. The equipment is not permanently discarded, but a short-term state similar to disarming. After the next wave of status refresh, the equipment will automatically fly back. This trick is so easy to play. The player who picks up things doesn't really pick up things, he just got into a state similar to being out of control. It's just that the Lord of Joy has designated a target for this state. Awesome. This move is not very lethal, but it can create chaos first class. No, I can't do this. It seems that I have to tell the secret. I'll come first. I didn't wash my feet last night. I'll wipe it. No, the secret judgment failed, I've been tricked. Brother, it's not a secret that you didn't wash your feet last night. We were all defending the city last night. Who has the time to wash your feet? So, it must be a secret that no one knows. It looks like this, I'll try it too. Let me tell you, Aang, I like to sleep naked. I have liked to sleep naked since I was a child. How is it? The brother who likes to sleep naked, has the judgment passed? Haha, passed, it really must be something that no one else knows to be considered a secret. After simple exploration, the players quickly figured out how to deal with this debuff called 7 Emotions and 6 Desires. As a result, the players on the city wall began to confide all kinds of secrets crazily. I once drank a bottle of body wash overnight. I have a wisdom tooth that has never been extracted. I've liked Captain for a long time. You pervert, I'm a man, I didn't expect you to be this kind of person. I like to secretly wear my sister's stockings. Okay, another pervert. Aw, boy, how dare you steal my silk stockings and see if I don't beat you to death when I get home. As the secrets were revealed one by one, the players on the city wall finally resumed their normal battle rhythm, but from their gradually embarrassed expressions, it is not difficult to guess that they probably don't have many secrets to tell. Outside the city wall, Zhang Qian also kept the gate of the underworld open, while launching an attack on Tang City from a long distance away. Elemental control consumes too much mana, compared to the consumption of dark flames, which consumes less mana. As one of the few long-range attacks in Zhang Qian's hands, the power of the Flame of Darkness has been strengthened a lot as he upgrades again and again. In the beginning, Flames of Darkness only changed his attack mode to long range, and later changed from a single player to a group, and his lethality also increased. Now, after being strengthened many times, the Flame of Darkness can already cause twice as much damage to the target as Zhang Qian's basic attack. The most valuable thing is that when used for single target attacks, this skill has almost no consumption. With a thought in Zhang Qian's mind, groups of flames of darkness immediately condensed into shape, and then flew towards the city wall ahead. Boom, boom, boom. Groups of dark flames fell on the barrier, consuming a large amount of energy in the barrier, and then the remaining power did not disappear on the players on the city wall. In an instant, hundreds of players were instantly blamed on the spot. The players were shocked, obviously they didn't expect Zhang Qian's attack to be so sharp. What a high damage. After being filtered by the enchantment, he can kill so many people instantly. This Lord of Wanwan is not much worse than the Blood Dragon Emperor. The Blood Dragon Emperor is the Emperor's boss, while the Lord of Unhappy is just the Sovereign's boss. The level gap between the two sides is so big, why do the skill damage look similar? No, it's not the same. In fact, the skill damage of the Lord of Unhappy will definitely be much lower, but the results caused by the two are the same. Anyway, their skills can kill us instantly after being filtered by the enchantment, no matter who is higher. What's the point of who is lower? Indeed, judging from the overflowing damage data, the skill damage of Lord of Unhappiness is indeed much lower than that of Blood Dragon Emperor. The two are not of the same order of magnitude at all. Even so, the Lord of Unhappiness is scary enough. If he is promoted to Emperor Boss Dollar, he will definitely be countless times more terrifying than the Blood Dragon Emperor. This is said as if he is not scary now. To be honest, I would rather face the 10-headed Blood Dragon Emperor than face the Lord of No Joy. Heroes see the same thing. Apart from Zhang Qian's side, the other bosses are also launching their final onslaught on Tang City. Tang City's defensive barrier is already in jeopardy, and it seems that it may run out of energy at any time. Before Zhang Qian came, the siege bosses basically fought on their own. Some attacked this section of the city wall, some attacked that section of the city wall, and some attacked the barrier. The PowerPoint is different, which is why Tang Cheng has been supported for so long. After Zhang Qian arrived, he brought all the long-range undead creatures under his command against. Launch a fierce attack on a point of the enchantment. In this case, the energy consumption of the enchantment will naturally increase significantly. There is no way to fight the undead in melee, they can only spread out and hit wherever they can. But even so, it is very difficult for players to deal with it. After all, the number of players in Tang City cannot be compared with that of the imperial capital, and the city itself cannot accommodate as many players as the imperial capital. Under such circumstances, it was naturally difficult for Tang Cheng to resist the current high-intensity attack. As time goes by, more and more undead creatures emerge from the underworld. The valley chosen by Zhang Qian is very large, and it can accommodate at least hundreds of millions of undead. And what comes to the world at this moment is only an insignificant part of it. Waves of top-level undead rushed in, overwhelming the entire city of Tang, and the pressure on the city defenses was also increasing. In the city, the player commanders are busy with their feet not touching the ground, and they are still transporting ordinary people at the fastest speed. Those ordinary people were terrified, but under the organization of the players, there was not much chaos. Waves of ordinary people boarded the teleportation array in an orderly manner, and were transported by the teleportation array to the nearest imperial capital. Several major player guilds are very heartbroken, and each wave of teleportation costs a lot of gold coins. Obviously, ordinary people simply cannot afford such a large consumption. Therefore, the gold coins consumed by teleportation can only be paid by several major player guilds. They had to do this, because the players belonging to the guild were also related to ordinary people, and it was impossible for ordinary people to be slaughtered by monsters. If ordinary people are ignored at this critical moment, then after this battle, the entire True Dragon Kingdom will not have a foothold for several major player guilds in Tang City. Just the verbal criticism of players from all over the country is enough to wipe out the player guilds in Tang City. How many people have not been transferred? The player guild responsible for the transfer of ordinary people is called Fenglingwei. It is a first-class guild in Tang City. The guild members are mainly female players. Since there may be debuffs on the city wall at any time that the female players are more resistant to, the leaders of several player guilds decided after discussion that Fengling will lead the female players. The experts are responsible for the transfer of ordinary people. At this moment, Xi Fengling, the president of the Fengling Association, is urging desperately in a roaring voice on the guild channel, "Hurry up, hurry up." The subordinate said with a bitter face, "President, there are tens of thousands of people, there is no way to go faster." Xi Fengling was anxious in her heart, and said in a hurry, "Let the public Li Nujiao gather everyone and build a defense line around the teleportation array. Once the city is broken and enters the stage of street fighting, we will do our best to block the monsters. Things are approaching the teleportation array. Send out all the resurrection coins, and you must persist until everyone is sent away." Suddenly, a big star and white light appeared from the resurrection point next to it. Some players walked out of the resurrection point in a panic, and ran towards the city wall like crazy. Someone ran and shouted, "The city wall is broken. Monsters are coming into the city." Xi Fengling's heart felt cold when she heard the words, and only one thought remained at the moment: Tang City is over. She seemed to have seen the picture of Tangcheng being reduced to ruins after the war. As time passed by, more and more players appeared at the resurrection point, and rushed to the front line without stopping. Indistinctly, in the distance, the extremely condensed black breath of death can already be seen advancing towards the center of the city. What is in the center of the city? The temple, resurrection point, and teleportation array are all here. The goal of these undead is very clear, that is to occupy Tangcheng. Many people thought so. "Look, it's the Lord of Huan Huan, he's in the battle himself." A player pointed to the sky in the distance, where there was a figure suspended in midair, throwing black fireballs at the players from time to time. All the players who saw this scene hated and feared this figure. Since the arrival of the era of changing jobs for all, Tang City has never been breached for nearly 200 years. As soon as the Lord of Woan came, he directly captured Tang Chengyang. This kind of powerful aggressiveness makes everyone terrified. This kind of terrifying executive power also made it impossible for everyone to resist. Finally, he is here. Like a high-ranking demon god. Attacking and killing all the way, the temple, resurrection point and teleportation array have been surrounded. Xi Fengling's heart was full of despair. There were still tens of thousands of people who hadn't moved away. They were doomed. But soon she was stunned, because the undead did not attack directly, but watched the ordinary people being transferred away not far away. What's the situation? Why don't these undead attack? What's the situation? Why don't these undead attack? Xi Fengling was extremely puzzled, but she didn't waste this opportunity. She came back to her senses and immediately yelled on the wartime command channel, "Don't be in a daze, keep sending. Hurry up." The teleportation continued, and the number of ordinary people dwindled. Xi Fengling sees hope, and it only takes a little time for ordinary people to be teleported away. At that time, players can let go of their hands and feet and fight a battle. Although the players in this battle were doomed to fail, there was a tragic ending, which was an explanation to Tang Cheng. The question is, will that godlike boss give him this chance? Xi Fengling stared at the figure quietly, feeling uneasy. Finally, the last ordinary person was also transferred. Xi Fengling's heart relaxed, and a smile appeared on her face. But at this moment, roars sounded one after another from all around. The undead are attacking, kill them. Xi Fengling turned her head to look, and felt a little confused. It's not that he doesn't attack, but he is waiting for ordinary people to transfer. This idea is a bit absurd, but Xi Fengling feels inexplicably that the truth should be like this. Zhang Qian watched those ordinary people being sent away, indifferent from the beginning to the end. Killing ordinary people means nothing to him. Undead instincts like to kill living people, and Zhang Qian is not a pure undead, so naturally he will not be swayed by that stupid instinct. Slaughter all living beings, and make all the world fall into dead silence. Is that fun? I'm afraid only some middle school teenagers would think that way. No, teenagers in the second year of middle school don't think that way either, only a psychopath with an extremely destructive tendency would think that way. After a lot of slaughter, all the players in the city were finally killed. At this time, the monster siege had long since ended. Except for Zhang Qian, all bosses have returned to their lairs. During this period, players from other cities came to support through the teleportation array one after another, but they were often beheaded by a group of top undead bosses as soon as they teleported over. After a while, no players come back. At this moment, the only resistance force left in the entire Tang City is the temple located in the center of the city. There are two powerful guards at the entrance of the temple, and the sacred attributes and skills are very restrained from undead creatures. The skills of the bosses summoned by Zhang Qian hit the temple guards, causing very limited damage. Compared with the upper limit of the opponent's blood volume, although it is not insignificant, it is difficult to kill quickly. Because he was worried that the conferred god players from other cities would come to support him, Zhang Qian did not intend to delay, so he acted directly. After a little estimation of the opponent's blood volume, he used the most powerful single target skill at hand. 200 Swords of Chaos. -1.2 5 times the damage factor of the skill plus crit. In an instant, it dealt a second by second air damage. Sacred power restrains the power of darkness, but conversely, the power of darkness can also restrain the power of the holy. It just depends on who is stronger and who is weaker. There is no doubt that the two guards at the gate of the temple are not Zhang Qian's opponents at all. After killing a temple guard with his unique move, he rushed up to fight the remaining temple guard at close quarters. Roar, evil undead, go back to the underworld. Zhang Qian responded indifferently. The long sword in his hand left scars one after another on the opponent's body. Every attack can knock out millions of HP of the opponent. The attack of the temple guards hit Zhang Qian without pain, so he didn't care much at all. This temple guard is actually a model of a conferred god player, but with more blood, and the attack and defense have been doubled. To put it bluntly, a temple guard is equivalent to a level 500 god-blessing player who is blessed by the gods. And no matter how powerful the player is, it is impossible to compare with the super boss in terms of offensive and defensive attributes. Therefore, there is a huge gap in the combat effectiveness of the two sides, but the temple guards have more HP, which is why they have resisted for so long. After about a minute or so, the only remaining guard of the temple was finally emptied of his last bit of blood and fell to the ground. Zhang Qian didn't even look at the equipment unleashed by the two temple guards. He stepped over their corpses and walked straight into the temple. After entering the temple, the first thing you see is a 7-meter-high statue. The image of this god is not like the gods in Western mythology, nor the gods in Eastern mythology, but has a unique style. Its majesty is many times stronger than the Chaos Dragon King. Fortunately, coercion is just coercion and will not have any real impact on Zhang Qian. Under the statue, there is an envoy praying devoutly, and it should be a woman from the figure. She turned around slowly, revealing a delicate and pretty face, with divine radiance in her eyes, and her overall image looked relatively peaceful and gentle. "The monarch of the underworld," she said calmly, "you shouldn't come here, this is the territory of the gods." Zhang Qian said casually, "You are wrong, this will be my territory." After saying that, he raised his hand and released a cluster of dark flames, shooting at the envoy under the statue. -300W. The weakness of the envoy was somewhat beyond Zhang Qian's expectation. Just a single flame of darkness could wipe out all the lives of the other party. Ding! You killed the servant of the celestial god Qingkong. This action has been regarded as a declaration of war by the celestial god Qingkong. The god made the illusory soul float out of the corpse, and slowly flew towards the heaven. After that, her body also turned into bits of light and disappeared, leaving only a rectangular token on the spot. Zhang Qian didn't stop the spirit of the envoy from leaving. As soon as he waved his hand, the rectangular token flew straight over. This token is exactly the main goal of his trip. Proof of evil. You proved your evilness by killing an innocent envoy in an unforgivable way. Now, you have the qualification to compete for the ultimate evil. Boss. Symbol of evil. The world boss, the most evil symbol. With this certificate of evil, Zhang Qian has the qualification to challenge the world boss. But obtaining the challenge qualification is just the beginning. It is impossible to challenge the world boss with Zhang Qian's current strength. Any world boss has the strength not weaker than the Chaos Dragon King. Every time a world boss comes, it is necessary to gather the strength of all the top players in the entire human world to destroy it. The world boss will not only drop 100% of the artifact components of the growth suit, but also drop the key material law fragments that ignite the divine fire. In addition to these two top-level resources, the world boss will also release a large number of various rare props and materials. In addition, the experience given by the world boss is also very rich. No matter how many times the player dies, as long as the world boss can be killed, the participating players will gain a lot of experience according to the ratio of damage and damage received. That is to say, even if you can't hurt the world boss, you can get a lot of experience as long as you are killed by the world boss. All these factors lead to the fact that every time a world boss appears, there will be countless players risking their lives to besiege it. Under such circumstances, if Zhang Qian wanted to kill the world boss, he would not only have to withstand the attack of the world boss, but also have to fight for it from countless players. Its difficulty can be imagined. It still needs to continue to develop for a period of time. It is not enough to super evolve to the emperor level, and the level must be raised as soon as possible. Zhang Qian silently opened the attribute panel and took a look. After these 3 days of harvesting, the power of faith has increased by more than 100 million, but the next super evolution is still more than 700 million power of faith. The task is daunting. However, it should be possible to gather together during the next time when the secret land comes. It's time to leave. Zhang Qian waved his hand to close the gate of the underworld, and then cast Shattering Void, crossing a long distance in an instant, and returning to the monarch's hall in the secret realm of the Dark Labyrinth. With the closing of the gate of the underworld, those undead summoned to the human world were also expelled to the underworld by the rules of the human world. To keep those undead forever in the human world, there must be a permanently open door to the underworld, so that the laws of the underworld can always bless those undead. Zhang Qian didn't have the energy to maintain the gate of the underworld for a long time, and there was no need to do so, so he simply let those undead creatures be expelled. When you have time in the future, you can go to that valley from the underworld and completely include it in your own territory. Back in the dark labyrinth, I don't know if the players were physically and mentally exhausted after repeated battles, or someone outside blocked the entrance. After more than 10 hours, not a single player came. Zhang Qian didn't care either. He leaned on the throne and closed his eyes to meditate until the entrance of the dark labyrinth was closed. This 9-day advent time is finally over. Not long after Zhang Qian returned to the dark labyrinth, groups of players came from all directions. Since the teleportation array was destroyed, players from other cities who came to support could only rush to the nearest town first, and then gather in Tang City through other means. But after arriving in Tang City, all the players realized that the entire Tang City was dead silent. Not only could there be no trace of any undead in the city, even a single corpse could not be found. What's going on? Didn't it mean that Tang City was attacked by a large number of undead? Didn't it mean that it was invaded by the undead plane? What about the undead? Where did they go? Tangcheng was indeed breached, but the undead disappeared. Did they go to attack other towns? No, there are no calls for help from any town at this time. Look carefully to see how much Tang City has been destroyed. I have already sent people to investigate, and the reinforcements from other directions are the same. No one has found anything. Oh, the central temple has been breached. The envoy was also killed. Gone. What about the loss of other functional facilities and various buildings? There is no loss. Only the central temple was breached and the envoy was killed. Apart from that, a section of the city wall was breached, and there is no other loss. Hiss. This is really weird. What on earth is this Dogby, the Lord of No Joy, trying to do? He captured Tang City but didn't occupy it, just for fun. It's really possible. With the personality of the Lord of Wanwan, it's really possible that it's just a joke. The leaders of the reinforcements who had figured out the situation were all at a loss, and no one could think of the purpose of the Lord of Joy. However, they are in a good mood. Because Tang City is still largely intact, it will soon return to its original prosperity. Soon, after repeated searches to confirm that there were no traces of undead nearby, and that no other places had been attacked, the leaders of the reinforcements finally breathed a sigh of relief, and informed all parties of the situation here. After learning that it was just a false alarm, the social platform suddenly became lively. Why are things so confusing? Has Tang City been breached? Tangcheng must have been breached, and the teleportation array can't be used anymore. There is no option to teleport to Tangcheng. During the non-national war, players could not control the intercity teleportation array, and there was no option to teleport to Tangcheng, so it could only explain the teleportation of Tangcheng. Array was destroyed. If even the teleportation array is destroyed, then the city must be broken. Could it be some guild in Tangcheng who did it? Probably not. The cost of repairing the teleportation array is very high. What are the benefits of destroying the teleportation array? Why is there no benefit? What if any guild wants to dominate the city? This is ridiculous. Those big guilds are too late to develop their own secret realms. Who has spare resources to build a public city? Okay, let's not talk about these unreliable guesses. Let's think about why the Lord of Wanwan broke Tangcheng and gave up. From this battle in Tangcheng, it can be seen that the Lord of Wanwan has already. He has the qualification to launch a plane invasion, so the question is, will he launch a plane invasion again? This time he just broke Tang City, will he break other cities next time? And will breaking Tangcheng be a rehearsal before a large-scale invasion? With that said, it seems that the Lord of Unhappy is really dangerous. Not necessarily. It is reported that the Lord of Wowan seems to be a little merciful. After he broke through Tangcheng, he did not attack ordinary people, but killed all the players in the entire city. As for ordinary people, he obviously had the opportunity to massacre, but he didn't do it in the end, which is obviously very abnormal. True or false? There are undead bosses that don't kill people. It's true, I was one of the last people to evacuate from Tangcheng, and there were still tens of thousands of people who hadn't had time to evacuate when the city was broken. The Lord of No Happiness besieges but does not attack, watching all ordinary. When they were evacuated, many people were scared to urinate. As a result, they urinated in vain. God, what a white pea, are you going to laugh at me to death? Although Tang City was rapidly rebuilt after the war, the aftermath of Tang City's breach was far from over. This wave of raids by Zhang Qian shocked all the players, and also made the player guilds in other cities vigilant. Player guilds are divided into 10 levels from low to high. Levels 1 to 3 are low-level guilds, levels 4 and 6 are intermediate-level guilds, levels 7 to 9 are high-level guilds, and level 10 is the top-level guild. Public cities are often jointly managed by members of guilds above the 7th level in the city. The shops and various facilities in the city can only be rented, and the resulting revenue can be shared equally by the management guild. Half, and the remaining half is urban development funds, which can only be used for urban development and construction, and cannot be withdrawn by anyone. So once the city is breached, the management guild will suffer huge losses. The development direction of public cities is often divided into 2 aspects: people's livelihood and military affairs. Not to mention people's livelihood, mainly to increase urban income. When players usually level up, they can get blueprints of facilities such as wonders, playgrounds, cinemas, and brothels. With these blueprints, corresponding buildings can be established in the city to improve the attractiveness of the city and attract people to consume. The military aspect is mainly to expand the city wall, add defensive towers, strengthen defensive barriers, and create puppet guards. Earlier, when the player level was low and the human environment was harsh, urban development mainly focused on improving the military level. Later, there were more and more high-level players, and the military level of cities in various places was sufficient to deal with most crises, so the military development of cities in various places stopped, and began to upgrade economic level. This time Zhang Qian breached Tang City, which really sounded a wake-up call to the management guilds of each city. Because it is not known whether Zhang Qian will attack the city, let alone which city he will attack, the cities in various places have to suspend economic development and start to improve their military level again. And while the player guilds were working hard to defend the city, Zhang Qian was not idle. After returning to the underworld, due to the substantial increase in strength, Zhang Qian is more sensitive to the coercion from the top of the Dead Bone Mountain. He felt it carefully for a long time, and finally decided to climb up the Dead Bones Mountain to find out. At this moment, he was walking alone among the white snow, his eyes were looking at the top of the mountain, and he was also guessing in his heart what was there. The coercion from the top of the mountain is getting stronger and stronger, and there is also a mysterious force suppressing the spirituality of all creatures within the range. So even though countless corpses were buried under the white snow, none of them could be revived into an undead creature. Zhang Qian wanted to fly up directly, but was firmly sucked to the ground. He tried to use Shattered Void, but the space crack closed just after it opened, and it was too late to travel through the void. With all these restrictions, even though he has all kinds of abilities, he can only move forward step by step. As it got closer and closer to the top of the mountain, the coercion from there became more and more tyrannical. After walking for 2 full days, Zhang Qian finally climbed to the top of Dead Bones Mountain. After seeing the situation on the top of the peak clearly, even though he had seen countless big scenes, he couldn't help showing a deep look of shock. Dead Bone Mountain soared into the sky, and at least half of it was shrouded in the dark clouds of the underworld. On the top of this majestic mountain, there is a platform covering only a few acres. But on this platform with only a few acres of land, there were 2 corpses exuding terror and coercion overlapping each other. A corpse with silver hair, wings growing from its back, wearing silver and light full-body battle armor, pierced the forehead of another corpse with a sharp sword. The other corpse was wearing a black robe. Under the black robe, there were only bones. The flesh and blood seemed to have disappeared. He was holding a huge scythe in his hand. The other hands of the 2 are holding an hourglass at the same time, each holding one end, as if neither of them wants to let go. God. Zhang Qian's pupils narrowed slightly, his eyes were full of shock. A god of death. An angel. The underworld is vast and boundless, and there are countless undead creatures. The highest status is none other than the ruler of the underworld. The so-called master of the underworld is the legendary king of the underworld. Pluto is not a king boss, but a god king boss. Even with Zhang Qian's current power, it is not clear how many ranks there are from the emperor boss to the god king boss. And every undead knows the existence of Pluto from the moment of birth. It is no exaggeration to say that the spirit system of the underworld is imprinted in the soul of every undead. Every undead creature automatically swore allegiance to Hades from the moment it was born. In other words, Zhang Qian's dove occupies the magpie's nest, so he cannot be regarded as a pure undead creature, otherwise he would have to kneel down and worship Hades the moment he saw Hades. And under Pluto, there are also a large number of gods of the dead. Some of them like to call themselves black and white impermanents, some like to call themselves bull-headed horse faces, some like to call themselves hell messengers, some like to call themselves soul ferrymen, and some like to call themselves Anubis. But for all living beings in the world, they have a unified name, the god of death. Of course, in this era of job change for all people, in this plane of the underworld, they are all just incredibly powerful boss, and they have no duty to lead creatures into the underworld. Among the two corpses on the platform of Dead Bones Mountain, the skeleton wearing a black robe and holding a scythe is the god of death. The reason why Zhang Qian was able to recognize him at a glance was because the other party still had a little health, and he could also see the other party's information. On the other side, the angel's secondary characteristics are very prominent. It is actually a female angel, and it also retains a little life value. So in theory, these two corpses are not real corpses yet. They are not completely dead yet. Zhang Qian frowned, puzzled in his heart. Why are they still alive? And each of them only has a little blood left. He took a closer look, but saw that the sharp sword in the angel's hand only pierced the eyebrow of death. This sword should have hurt the soul of death god, which is considered a fatal injury. And the sickle of death also penetrates the heart of the angel, which is also a fatal injury. The two gods were both fatally injured, but they both retained a little life value, which is really strange. Zhang Qian was thoughtful, and finally his eyes fell on the hourglass in the other hand of the two. However, although there is a lot of sand on the upper end of the hourglass, not a single grain of gravel has fallen, and it is completely still. Could it be that the state of these two gods is related to this hourglass? The hourglass is related to time. Could it be that their time is in a static state? Thinking of this, Zhang Qian suddenly felt a little excited. Treasures related to time, if they can only speed up or slow down time, are fine, but if they can stop time, they are definitely divine weapons. If such an artifact can be obtained, what kind of benefits will it bring? But, can I take this artifact? Looking at the two gods who seemed to be in a state of static time, Zhang Qian hesitated for a while. Will touching this hourglass freeze time? Stay in this moment forever? I'm developing right now. If I'm trapped in this moment forever, won't I never be able to improve my strength? And once I'm trapped in this moment, can my thinking still move? It's fine if my thinking can't move, but if the mind can move, wouldn't it be equivalent to being imprisoned in this body forever once it's trapped? No matter what kind of situation, it is not a good thing for Zhang Qian, and he is terrified when he thinks about the consequences. How much power do these two gods have left? Do they still have the ability to kill me? To take, or not to take? Zhang Qian thought about it, but he still couldn't resist the temptation. He slowly stretched out his hand and approached the hourglass gradually. Finally, he touched the hourglass. At this moment, the angel and the god of death turned their heads to look at Zhang Qian at the same time. In the next moment, their remaining life points completely disappeared, and then they all released the hourglass feebly, and fell to the ground. Zhang Qian stared at this scene in a daze. His silver-gray eyes reflected countless grotesque scenes, and finally fixed on the scene in front of him. When he came back to his senses, he couldn't help but fall into ecstasy. You made the right bet. The supreme artifact, the sands of time. It will be mine from now on. Zhang Qian suppressed the excitement in his heart, and his expression gradually returned to calm. Although there was an element of gambling, he actually had some confidence before he acted. The two gods are both holding the hourglass of time, and both have only a little life left, which seems like a coincidence. How can there be such a coincidence in the world? Therefore, Zhang Qian guessed that this should be a tacit agreement between the two gods, and they jointly use their final strength to keep themselves immortal through the hourglass. So stalemate, spent a long time. The reason why the two have been able to maintain this state should be to maintain a certain balance. Based on this inference, Zhang Qian believes that as long as there is a third-party force to break the balance, the static state of time can be ended. And since the two gods have only a little life left, it seems that their strength is also very little left. Even if they are pulled out of the static state of time, they may not still have the ability to fight. Judging from the results, Zhang Qian guessed correctly after all. Even, the result was better than he imagined. Due to the influence of the hourglass, the two gods have actually been trapped in a certain period of time in the past. As the balance is broken, their lost time is made up. But this is not a good thing, because according to the normal development track, they should have fallen completely long ago. When the lost time is made up, then everything that should happen will happen. They deserve to die or they will die, and what happened after death will continue to happen. This can be seen from their corpses. The god of death holding a scythe completely dissipated his soul after death, but his bones have been nourished by the dead energy and dark power of the underworld, and a new spirituality was born. Under Zhang Qian's gaze, he stood up staggeringly, broke free from the sharp sword nailed between his eyebrows, and pulled out the sickle stuck in the angel's body. Then, he just stood there blankly, not knowing what to do at all. On the other side, the same is true for the silver-haired female angel. After the time stillness ended, the sacred aura on her body quickly disappeared completely, and there was a strong death and blackness in the next city. The pure white wings turned into pure black, and the golden eyes turned into silver gray. The armor on his body and the long sword in his hand were also completely eroded by death energy and dark power, completely transformed into dark attribute equipment. All this seems to happen in a blink of an eye, but in fact it is the accumulation of long years in the past. There is no trace of the erosion of the years, but as long as the accumulation time is long enough, it can show a frightening influence. Looking at the two brand new undead creatures, Zhang Qian felt a little suspicious about the power of time. Can time really change destiny? I'm afraid it won't be that easy. Thinking this way in his heart, Zhang Qian couldn't help but look at the hourglass in his hand. Sands of time, the manifestation of the law of time. Mastering the sands of time is easy to master time. As Zhang Qian expected, this treasure is indeed a treasure that allows people to control time, and it doesn't even have any other superfluous attributes. Without any hesitation, he directly forced out a little soul fire and imprinted it on the sand of time. The whole world suddenly stood still for a moment. Zhang Qian seemed to be in a big river with no end and no shore, and let the river wash away for countless years. I don't know how long it has passed, it seems that it has only passed for a moment, and it seems that 10,000 years have passed. When Zhang Qian opened his eyes again, there was a flash of vicissitudes in his eyes, as if after countless years, his mentality became even more calm. It turns out that this is the power of time. After Sands of Time recognized its master, Zhang Qian basically understood how to use the law of time. He originally thought that after mastering the law of time, he could go directly to the past and kill the weak enemies like in some online articles he read in his previous life. But now I know that that kind of thinking is simply the brainless obscenity of ignorant people. Time is like an endless river. Any external force can only stop part of the river from flowing, and when the external force disappears, the surrounding river will quickly fill the gap. When you swim upstream, your future self ceases to exist. Just like Zhang Qian, although he has mastered the sands of time at this moment, he can go back to the past to a certain extent. But after going back to the past, I can only make myself younger. However, the power that grew after that time point cannot be brought back, and the memory between the two time points will also disappear. This means that going back in time will have no effect on the future. What should happen, everything will continue to happen. What shouldn't happen, still won't happen. Therefore, the greatest significance of controlling time is to explore the past and predict the future through the long river of time, and then influence the future through everything you do now. When the law of time is applied to combat, there are only 3 moves: time acceleration, time slowing down, and time standing still. Using time to help oneself speed up, slow down the speed of the enemy, and imprison the enemy all require great energy. The stronger the target is, the more mana it consumes. With Zhang Qian's current magic power, an ordinary person can be stopped in time for a lifetime, but it can only stop a powerful person like the Chaos Dragon King for a few seconds. All in all, although the law of time is powerful, it does not depend on the strength of the user. As a metaphor, the law of time is an engine, and it must be provided with enough energy to generate enough power. Zhang Qian put away the Sand of Time, but in his heart he wanted to completely absorb the power of this artifact as soon as possible. For the boss, the equipment is not important, only the power that can be controlled as you like really belongs to you. Although Zhang Qian is now bound to the Sands of Time soul, if he is killed by the player, this artifact may still be exploded, just like the armor he wears and the long sword in his hand. Thankfully, the boss can absorb the energy of the equipment and turn it into his own power. It's just because low-end equipment has no conversion value, so Zhang Qian has never used this ability. In addition, the equipment in his hands is the manifestation of the power of the territory. In the final analysis, it is the power he differentiated, and there is no need to absorb it back. The Sand of Time is different. This artifact is not only an accidental gain, but also possesses the highest power in the world, so it must be completely transformed into one's own power. After making up his mind, Zhang Qian cast Eye of Chaos on the two newborn undead around him. Death remains Thanatos. Level 30. Rank Legendary Monarch. Evolution 9kW 100. Evolution Attribute Growth Rate 2. Super Evolution 9kW 10E. Super Evolution Attribute Growth Rate 7. Life 2352W. Mana 235W. Attack 235W 282W. Defense 235W. Skills Harvest, Death, Soul Hunger. Territory None. Death Angel Lucifer. Level 20. Rank Legendary Monarch. Evolution 3kW 100E. Evolution Attribute Growth Rate 2. Super Evolution 3kW 10E. Super Evolution Attribute Growth Rate 8. Life 2048W. Mana 204W. Attack 204W 286W. Defense 204W. Skills Advent, Dark Resurrection, Dark Judgment, Element Control. Territory None. After seeing the attributes of these two newborn undead, Zhang Qian couldn't help being surprised. As expected of the resurrection of the bones of the gods, the initial rank has reached the legendary Zijin. Zhang Qian thought for a moment, and suddenly realized that these two new undead had already evolved to the stage of gods before they were alive. Resurrected after death, the strength has not advanced but retreated. The current panel should be the result of degradation. Zhang Qian casually released the Dark Pact, trying to subdue the two newborn souls. He didn't expect much at first, but he didn't expect to succeed at once, and he actually got along with the two newborn souls. The spiritual monarch established a master-servant relationship. Is it so easy? Zhang Qian was a little surprised. Dark Pact, a common skill for undead creatures, needs to be compared with the ranks of both parties when using it. There is basically no possibility of failure for high-level undead to use against low-level undead. However, when low-level undead are used against high-level undead, there is a high probability of failure, and the success rate is infinitely close to zero. Therefore, if a low-level undead wants to subdue a high-level undead, it must beat the opponent half to death and weaken its soul power to a certain extent. But under normal circumstances, it is impossible for low-priced undead to beat high-level undead. Therefore, it is almost impossible for low-level undead to surrender high-level undead. Zhang Qian guessed that the fact that he was able to subdue these two newborn undead monarchs might also be related to the fact that they have been trapped here and experienced a blank after recovery. No matter what, this wave not only harvested a powerful artifact, but also subdued two powerful subordinates, which is called double happiness. One can imagine the joy in Zhang Qian's heart when he suddenly obtained such a huge profit. However, he quickly noticed a problem. Why? There is an extra evolutionary attribute growth rate on the attribute panels of these two subordinates, but the super evolutionary attribute growth rate of the two is different. What's going on? Comparing the growth rate of their own super evolutionary attributes, it is obvious that the growth rate of the super evolutionary attributes of these two subordinates is much lower. How low? You may not be able to see anything in the early stage, but the gap will become bigger as you go back. Even in the later stage, compared with the same level, the attributes of the two parties may differ by tens or hundreds of times. Such a terrifying gap is enough for Zhang Qian to instantly kill them. But Zhang Qian was puzzled. Why is there such a big difference in the growth rate? Is it related to their respective aptitudes? These two are revived gods, and their aptitudes are so different. Not as good as me. Then what kind of terrifying existence was this body I occupied in life? He thought for a moment, and then took out the sands of time that had been put away. All mysteries have nothing to hide in front of the law of time. Since he couldn't guess the truth, he went back to the past to witness it with his own eyes. As mana poured into the hourglass, the nearby time and space suddenly began to distort. The figures of Zhang Qian and his two subordinates also gradually changed, like dream bubbles floating in the air. I don't know how long it took, and some visions disappeared. Zhang Qian's expression was shocked, and he regained consciousness in an instant. It turns out that my predecessor was so terrifying. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.